Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Alphadraft by the Numbers. I'm your host Richard Lewis, and with me as always, discussing everything CSGO, it is esports finest historian, confined to a utopian paradise in Korea where he doesn't have to worry about North American and European fanboys. How are you doing, Thorin? You good?
Yeah, all right. That's not actually the sole reason I'm in Korea, though, is it? Well,
Mate,
it sounds like a good reason.
That Fox fanboy that was posting on the YouTube channel, the one who was threatening to beat you up if you ever go to a Spanish or Portuguese event, I reckon that's why you're in Korea, mate. I think you're in hiding. I think you're running scared.
Just all those Portuguese events I have to miss, it tears me up inside, mate. I mean, the relevancy of Portuguese CS is at an all-time high right now.
And I used to like the XL parties and whatnot in Source, but yeah, their scene does seem to have tailed off ever so slightly. No wonder people worship at the altar of Fox so readily. Anyway, plenty to talk about this week. There's been all sorts going on. And I think we'll start with the Acer Predator Masters. I was at that event. Obviously, you weren't, Duncan, although I'm sure you were invited. But as you said, you work so many events.
No, listen, mate. There's a way you can tell if I'm at an event on the talent side. Just look at the rest of the talent list and see, like, is Rahim on this list? Yeah, okay, Thorin isn't, so, you know, oil doesn't mix with water, so that definitely won't be on there.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I've been saving. I've been saving talking about that whole sort of debacle while I was out there for this show, because I thought, you know, Alphadraft support me and the content we want to do, and they allow us to say whatever we want to say. You showed some bro solidarity by pulling your AMA from the CSGO subreddit after that Rahim thread went up. And just for those that missed it, maybe, this is basically what happened. We did a late night cast. I can't even really remember the game, but it was the last game of day 2. And
I think it was mousesports versus someone, right?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway,
I think someone like might actually been someone like E-Frag or someone. Right? Was someone not that good? I think.
Yeah, we did the mousesports E-Frag one. I remember doing that. But anyway, so what had happened was it had been a really long day, as you can imagine. It was the second day that we'd been there. You know, people had been traveling. Guys like Henry had jet lag. You know, all of us casters have very busy schedules. You know, we're traveling. Like, I'm doing an event almost every weekend, it seems. Duncan can definitely identify with this. So everyone was really tired. It's the last game of the day. People have had a few beers the night before as well, because that's how Take TV operates. That's what Dennis wants from his event. He wants everyone to be having fun, having a few brews, you know, and of course people were tired and wanted to get to bed. So we got to this last game of the day, and it was basically a skeleton staff. And I'd done 2 games, and I think Henry had done 2 games. And Rahim was up to cast. And what we'd sort of agreed was that he would probably be better off doing some casts with DDK. Dan wasn't around. He was really tired. So we got asked by the production, put together whatever 4 you think is going to be best for the league. Sorry, for the cast. Just get whoever you can on the couch. So it was me and Henry were still around. And obviously it was Rahim's turn to go up. And we got told one of the players wanted to come on the sofa, and it was Johnny from Killerfish. And he'd obviously gone out of the tournament. He was about to go home anyway for the whole event. So we were like, yeah, okay, let's just do that. Now, nobody's objected to this at any point, by the way, right? So we sit down and we said on air, and just before we went live, like, right, me and Henry have already done our games today, and Rahim, we want you to do your thing because we think you've been a little bit quiet over the course of the event. You haven't had your vintage babam and cuckoo kill and all that other stuff he says. So we really want you to basically carry this cast. We're just going to sit here in case there's any awkward silences, because we know you haven't worked with Johnny before, and we'll bail it out if it gets too boring. Anyway, it becomes abundantly clear that for whatever reason, Rahim isn't happy with the way the cast is going. So he is really introverted. It's not a very good cast. Me and Henry G are trying to G him up and trying to get him to go, but it just didn't seem to work. So Henry G tweeted something along the lines of, "This is as close to my idea of hell as it could possibly be," which wasn't aimed at me being drunk. Like I said, at the time, I think I'd only had 6 beers that day. I was saving myself for later in the event. That's 6 bottles as well, which is less than 3 pints. If you can imagine anyone getting drunk on that, good luck to them. You've met a 12-year-old. Anyway, so he tweeted, "This is as close to hell as it can get." And what he meant was the cast was that bad. The chemistry wasn't working. No one was saying anything. Not drunk or badness. Anyway, thread goes up on Reddit saying that we're bullying Rahim and that we ruined his ability to do the broadcast. Huge furor. People are basically calling for me to be banned from every event. Someone even accused me of being racist. Apparently, I used a word I'd never heard of before, and obviously I didn't. But somebody accused me of using the word chunny, which I think is like Indian for dickhead or something. I mean, why would I know that?
Is he Indian?
I don't even know. I think he's from...
I just thought he was from Russia or something. I
no, he's from, not Kyrgyzstan, but like Tajikistan. I think he's from. I think he's from Tajikistan. So
somewhere Middle Eastern.
Yeah, so why an Indian why an Indian specific insult would be appropriate anyway? I mean, that suggests to me the person that's come up with that theory is racist. So you see someone with brown skin, must be Indian, right? Like, doesn't even care about people's ethnicity or whatever. So anyway, that was out there. I'm getting absolutely fucking hammered on Twitter. I lost 600 Twitter followers. Multiple threads called to boycott me, saying what a horrible person I was. I went ham on Twitter, as I usually do, because I don't give a fuck. And I went to bed and I woke up the next day. And I was like, right, we need to have a meeting about this, because we've got to make this abundantly clear that no one's being bullied. We're all having a good time. So we call the meeting of staff, which we've had every day. And keep in mind, Rahim hasn't come to a single one of these meetings, but we'll get into that in a second. And we get Rahim, and he comes in and he goes, "Oh, what's wrong? What can I do?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we need to have a talk about what's been going on social media." And he says, "Oh, I don't look at social media." But we saw him looking at Reddit on his phone. So we know, first of all, that he has been looking at social media during the event. And second of all, he is obviously very aware of what we're talking about. So I said to him, I said, "Look, man, like, I don't know what you thought about last night's cast, but I didn't think anyone was bullying you or trying to step on your toes. We really want you to do your thing. We really want you to have a platform to be yourself. And, I don't know how we can better facilitate that." So he says, as far as I'm concerned, the whole format for the show, having 4 people on the sofa and doing a cast is shit. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, "I can't do my thing if there's more than 2 people." And I went, okay, well, that's kind of like the format of how a Home Story Cup works. And he went, And we're like, okay. And then I said, right, so how should we do it then? And he said, well, I don't really think any of the talent combinations work. I don't think having you or Henry or Dan or Vendetta is going to work for me. So literally all the talent that's been hired, he's just said, I don't see how we can work together. And I'm just sat there like, right, so what do you want to do? So he said, I've done some casts before with Fabe. Now, Fabe was the guy on the production team. He's the guy who hired all the talent, works with Dennis Galen. And he said, like, he was doing the German cast as well. So he was extremely busy. And he wasn't meant to be in the talent team for the English cast. And Rahim says, I've cast with him before, so I'll cast my games with him from this point onward and no one else. And I was just like, well, I don't know if we can necessarily make that happen. And then he started going off on this weird tangent where he was saying, you have to understand, I'm used to casting with the best. And I went, what does that mean? And he went, I've done casts with Get Right, with Khan. I'm like, yeah, but none of those guys are here, Rahim. It's a team, we've got to try and make it work. And he just was having none of it. And then he basically, so I said to him, I said, look, no one's bullying you though, are they? And he went, oh, no, I am not a small boy. And I was like, we were laughing. I was like, okay, well, it might be super unreasonable his demands in terms of like talent and who he wants to work with, but at least he accepts there is no bullying going on. And
I don't listen. Wait, just before you go on, let me just make a guess, okay? Before you tell the rest of the story, I don't know any more of these details. By the way, I've never heard this story. It was only a few days ago, anyway. We haven't spoke since then. But I'm going to go ahead and guess already that since it sounded like it was okay, maybe he like said something on like Russian Facebook or said something in an interview in Russian or something, and that now there's some other side's going to come out that you found out later. Is this what's going to happen?
No, not even that. Right? No? This is what he said to me and Henry. He just basically turned around and said, if you want, I can go on social media and tell everyone what I think. Almost like a blackmail thing. And it was quite clear what he meant was he wasn't.
I wish I was there, mate. I would have handled this. I would have.
So but at this point, right, like there's already this potential scandal around the event. Rahim knows it, and he's leveraging it basically. This was the other thing he demanded. He wanted to do the last game of the next night. And I was I said, well, for the sake of the broadcast, wouldn't you rather do the game before or an earlier game? Because if you know your casting can be divisive, you know not everybody likes your casting, you know that. That's why you don't look at social media by your own admission. Wouldn't it be better to end on something more conventional? And he was just like, no. And it was literally, we had to basically have him cast with Fabe and only Fabe, and do the games he wanted at the times he wanted. Or he was going to basically make it look like we'd all been fucking really unreasonable to work with. So at this point, what can we do? We just basically gave in and just let him have everything he wanted for the rest of the broadcast. And, you know, everyone in the team, everyone in the group was just like really despondent, you know, like we were put in this situation where like one guy on the team doesn't want to have anything to do with us. So back to some of the other details, like every day, as you know, Duncan, you come in early, about 2 hours early minimum. You have a production meeting. You talk about things you want to work in the broadcast. You talk about the rundown, the order of everything that's going to go. Rahim didn't come to one of those meetings. Not one. He would typically turn up 5 minutes before the day started or 5 minutes before his game. And, you know, sometimes I didn't come in until later, which is why you didn't see me on the broadcast. But that's because we'd arranged specific times for everything. We had no idea whether Rahim knew when he was going to be on, whether he wasn't. He just didn't want to work with us at all, basically. I was like super disappointed about that. But anyway, regardless, I thought for the event, we'll just knuckle down, try and get on with it, and try and best accommodate him as we could. So that there is your fucking bully, right? A guy who basically made him so miserable and so sad. I don't think anyone in the group, people out there, really wanted to work with him again because it was like that unpleasant. I've never had an event like it where basically somebody just comes in and sort of just lays out these fairly egregious demands and basically makes everybody sort of work around what they want to do. And that's how the whole thing went down. So I got absolutely fucking mobbed for nothing. Like, literally, it was just like, do you know what? Fuck the CSGO community because they're fucking idiots. And plus, on top of that, even if you aren't happy with the way
that cross-section at least, you know, and the one that was getting mad, yeah.
Well, maybe. I don't even know, mate. I didn't see a lot of people talking sense until 2 days fucking later. So I hardly saw anyone leaping to my defense on, oh, that's not a bully. There was no video evidence of us even talking over him at any point in the broadcast. Like, the only time we spoke, like, to remind him that he was on air and that you can't just have 10 seconds of silence. You gotta fill that space. So I was just like, this is just fucking unreal. But anyway, at the end, all handshakes, you know, good job, mate. But I couldn't believe it. I literally couldn't believe it. It was just super difficult, like a super difficult working environment. Anyone who thought we were having fun out there, there was at least a 24-hour period where I was like, I said to Fabe, I said, look, if you want me to walk, I'll go. Because I just don't see this working out. And with all of the drama that was happening, like, just fuck it. You know what I mean? So that's what working with Rahim is like. That's what you missed.
Let me give you my take on this, Richard, because I've just thought about this topic when it's going on. So first and foremost, like I don't think in any way the stuff that you were doing with that guy was bullying in any sense.
Well, no, of course it isn't.
Like one of the things, if you remember, that people kept citing to show that you were bullying, right, was never any stuff from the broadcast. Like, people did initially show stuff. They just showed stuff in that bit where it was the beginning of the game and he wasn't talking. And you guys were sort of saying, like, come on, mate, you know, do your thing. Which people took to be kind of like condescendingly. You were like, oh, go on, monkey dance or something. It's like, well, no, he has to talk. He's a fucking play-by-play caster.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? So anyway, there's that. But if you notice, one of the things people kept bringing up and linking to, Rich, was this show. We're at the end of the show where we're just wrapping the fucking thing up. You, as an offhand way to tease the event, mention like, you know, you're not going to be there, I'm going to be there. And you know who's going to be there, of course, Rahim. And then I obviously say like, oh, well, glad I'm not there then, you know. And it's like, ha, ha, ha. You don't even say anything, essentially. You literally just say like, oh, I don't know what it's going to be like myself, you know, because you haven't worked with Rahim before. And you obviously know his reputation, which is super divisive because of his style of casting, which is extremely, you either like it or you think it's terrible. Now, here's the thing to make the point of, okay? I just want to make a point about that video, okay? Richard wasn't bullying Rahim in any sense there. He didn't say anything about Rahim in that sense. I think Rahim is shit. That's why, in that part of the video, I mockingly suggested, why would I want to work at an event where Rahim's at? Now, here's something to explain, right? I've only ever once in history suggested that Rahim shouldn't cast an event, right? Which was at Copenhagen Games this year, where it was actually because the fault of Copenhagen Games organizer was that they didn't have anyone lined up to broadcast. I think it was the lower bracket final or the lower bracket semi-final. So we're talking like deep into the tournament when it was like two good teams playing. I think it was like Dignitas and TSM playing or something, you know, a game that everyone wants to watch. And what happened was, it turned out they didn't have their own casters, like, you know, Assembly and whoever else it was, those people. They had them scheduled for a break. And so what they did was this is how incompetent Copenhagen Games staff is, by the way, which you all know about if you come from the past to CS. They thought to themselves, well, Rahim does it and he sort of does it in English, right? So let's just throw his cast on as the live main cast, like let's host that. And he was the solo caster for that big event. So as a result, you know what his style's like. If you choose his style, if you opt into his style, no problem. It's great. Yeah, exactly, go for it. Exactly. If you enjoy that. But if that's my only choice to listen in English to that style, and you have the opinion I have of his casting, which is that I don't like anything about his personality. I think his jokes are shit. One-line jokes that if I've heard half of one, I don't want to ever hear another one. And I think he's actually a crap as a caster. Like I don't care about any of that stuff. I don't like hype casters anyway, mate. You know, there's no analysis there. It's like the opposite of I want from casting. So my point I'm making here is that's the only time I ever suggested, like, why is this guy fucking allowed to cast? It's because essentially I was forced to listen to him if I wanted to watch the game. So really, I wasn't even mad at him. I was mad that that's my only option. So the point I'm trying to make here is I can think he's total shit without myself in somewhere being a bully who's like stopping him working. I'm not doing fuck all, mate. If he's a second stream and a second option, go at it. Have all day long. Otherwise, if he's the only option, like all of you fucking plebs listening to this now or as fans of his, guess what? I'm allowed to have an opinion on the caster too. You know, when you guys are like, minus this guy who I haven't seen for a while and plus standards, you're doing the same thing, you fucking cunt. Except the worst thing is, whoever you're saying -2 is about 100 times better than Rahim will ever be. So that's just fucking ludicrous. So anyway, in case I haven't made it entirely clear before I talk about this event, Rahim is fucking terrible. I'd rather hear a fucking looped over talkback replay of the death rattle of my own first child from a fucking woman who was later made barren by the fucking Counterstrike community in my own ears while trying to watch the game, rather than ever hear him like, rocket launcher. Now then, with that out of the way, I just want to make sure there was nothing unclear about this. Now let's talk about Rahim at this event. So I'm saying there, I actually don't know him personally. I don't have anything against him as a person, except for the fact that I guess his casting style is very personal. So I obviously despise him as a person and don't ever want to hear him speak or see him. But okay, now that I see him at this event, it's even worse. Because like I said before, he was just a secondary caster, right? Now, he's literally in a position where he's hired to cast. He's obviously a fucking freak show cast who is hired as a joke and because he has a big following, not because he's a great caster. Now, what's funny is that sounds genius for Take TV, because if you know anything about how Take TV do their events, their whole shtick, their whole flavor, atmosphere is to make it very different to all real super professional buttoned up events. So they want it to be fun. Hence, they promote drinking on stream and purposely, if you've seen StarCraft 2 events, purposely make casting combos happen that you would never do if you're a talent manager. Purely because, listen, sometimes they go terribly wrong. So it's just funny. And then on other times, it might actually work amazingly, but you never would have tried that out, you know. Like, you'd never try out these three players who like actually hated each other in game, but you find out, hey, they actually kind of have a cool synergy where they work together in this way. So, okay, listen, that sounds actually ideal to me. I would have said maybe Rahim will work there. But this is the most disappointing part. It now turns out he's not fucking speaking and he's not even doing his shit jokes. The only reason he's hired, he's not even fulfilling. So basically, he's shit at his job. I don't ever want to hear him. And he's not even a good professional. And no, I'm sorry, any Rahim fan, right? By the way, who I'm both most butthurt universal people ever. It's unreal. But anyway, who would have thought, right? The person who thinks that's wonderful would be butthurt and everything. Yeah, who knows?
Go figure.
Anyway, so that sort of a person doesn't seem to understand either that, like, you think we don't go to events and work with people that we don't even think are good or sometimes think are actively bad? You'll never find that out, by the way, because once we get signed up and once we're on the talent list, there's like a camaraderie when you're at events. You try to make the other person better. Even if you think they're shit, you know what? If they ask you, you give them some pointers, or you say, you know what? I've even gone to people. I'm not going to mention names. I've even gone to people like the day before an event, or messaged them on Skype. Like, listen, we're working with this person. I'll be honest with you. I think he's pretty terrible. I think he has these problems. But here's the thing. I think if you shape him this way when you're casting with him, or I've told the manager guy, like, you pair him with this sort of a person instead, he's going to come off a lot better. Or maybe tell him, like, steer away from these things. I'm trying to make him better, make the cast better, because we're all working together. It's a fucking family environment. So what's funny is every single LAN I do, almost without question, actually, I get on with all the people, and I usually have like a camaraderie, even with the guys I don't think are good, just because if they've been receptive for this stuff, I realize, all right, they're trying to do their best, they're trying to do for the best for the cast. So now that I find out all his backstory, as well as him just not doing his fucking job at the event and doing a shit job, I'll tell you what, it brings it down even further. Because like I said before, I didn't like his casting, but it could have, everything else could have been fine. Whereas at the moment, this sounds like ridiculous diva behavior, you know?
Oh, it was. The thing is as well, like, I know there's a chance there'll be a response video or whatever. I don't give a fuck. Right. Everyone who was there knows exactly what went down. I don't care. Like, I got nothing to lose by telling the fucking truth. Like, I was so fucking despondent by the end of the event, really, with just how it all went and the amount of shit and abuse I got. I mean, I had people threatening to come to the fucking venue and basically fucking beat me up because I'd bullied Rahim, which, of course, didn't even happen anyway, right? And even the circle jerk that was against me bullying Rahim turned into, yeah, but you said nasty things on Twitter, therefore you are a bully, so we don't even need evidence of the thing that we accused you of, because now we've got evidence of you doing something else that we baited you into. And it was just this fucking shitstorm. So, and you know what it's like as well. For some reason, when you're the host, even though it's the producers and the guy who runs the event that should be sort of negotiating these things, always seems to fall on the host. Always does. You act as a go-between for talent. You act as a go-between for talent and the production staff. Any things that need to do better. I mean, you know, you've seen it. Like, when we're not happy with, like, you know, we haven't had time for sound check and our mics are shit and we're getting feedback in our ear, it's me who goes to the production staff and says, yeah, look, if you guys are unhappy with the desk, we really got to work on the sound before we go live again. Can we do it? And that's the thing, the ultimate thing. My fucking trigger word, unprofessional. We're the unprofessional ones, Duncan. The ones that, like, yeah, like you say, we work with people that we don't necessarily like. And it goes the other way, actually. Like, imagine what it's like for me to be told, you know, like, well, yeah, there's people at events that don't like you, or you've had run-ins with in the past. And the first thing I always do is we just address that. Look, we've got to work together. Yeah. It's never been a big thing. And not only that, though, like, imagine what it's like for somebody like me. I'm not a play-by-play caster, right? I haven't been for years, right? But they specifically said, do you want to do some play-by-play? And I'm like, well, you know, I don't know if the community will like it very much. But anyway, I've got to do it, right? The show must go on. So if I do...
Oh, that's the key there, Richard. That's what everyone has. That's why it always works behind the scenes, because everyone has that mentality. The show must go on. Like, whatever problems we have, and even if it's shit, we got to make the best of it. Like, that's why it's ridiculous to me, this notion that he wouldn't do his casting and his style of casting as it was. That's like someone coming up. You know when Bart Simpson in that episode got famous for being like, what was the line he said? Like, I didn't do it or something. Yeah. So he got, and, you know, eventually the problem was, you know, because the fame of doing that, he became a one-note joke. You know, he didn't want to go up and just say, I didn't do it or whatever. And he kind of resented it. Well, guess what? If that's all you're famous for, you can't then be like, I don't want to be like labeled, man, and pushed into a box where I feel like that's all you want me to do. Plot twist, that is all you can do. You have no fucking talent or ability. Now do the thing we hired you for, please. Nah, I feel like actually I should take over the show and it should be called like, I didn't do it, but with a twist where like I can do different versions of it and like one backwards, like a fucking David Lynch dream sequence involving a clown. Like, no, mate, do your job or get the fuck out, because we're all doing our job. And by the way, if anyone thinks it's bullying to think a guy's rubbish, etc., you've missed the whole point of this fucking rant, which was you work with them anyway, and then you hope that you make things better. Actually, if anything, you hope that, hey, you know what, I think this guy was shit, but hopefully, if I talk to him, if I help do this, maybe we make him better. We have his stuff that people like. We add in a bit of other thing.
right? And just on a final note, and then we'll move on to talking about the event. Like, it wasn't like I wasn't trying to include him. Like, you could go through the VODs, and there were so many times I said to him, I said, well, look, Dan's given his opinion, Vendetta's given his opinion, you know, whoever it was. What's your opinion, Rahim? What's your opinion? You know, how do you analyze this one? How do you call it? And he would say the same thing. He would go, I'm just play-by-play. So I'm even trying to, like, say your opinion's valid, you know, like, your thoughts on the teams and the events are as valid as anyone else here. We're all equal. We've all got parity. No, he just wasn't interested in any of that shit. It was literally, I've never had anything like it at a cast. And for me, like say, to get all of that shit, right, when I'm the guy that's really trying to hold it together, I was just like, do you know what? Like, fuck doing events. Like, serious. You know, I've got a bunch that I've already agreed to do. I don't think I'll take any extra ones on. Because no one should have to go through that, like, fucking waking up to fucking death threats in your inbox because of something that never happened, but you said someone had a big head on Twitter, so you deserve to die now or whatever. It's just, it's insane. Like, it was absolutely insane. And just on a funnier note, right, check this out. Right, you'll love this one, yeah? It's not even like you can take comfort from the fans a lot of the time. You think, well, at least I've got my fans, yeah? So there was a fan at the event, right? Guy, his staff member come down into the green room, came down to me. He goes, oh, there's a fan upstairs, desperately wants to meet you. I went, oh, okay, cool. And this was the day after the Rahim thing, so I thought, this is probably the guy that's going to stab me to death, right? It's probably the guy that's going to stab me to death, right? I'm dead. But I thought, fuck it, face the music. Right at this moment, I don't even really care. You know, if I go out with a bang. As soon as I'm dead, everyone will say I was brilliant. So I go up the stairs, go to meet him, and a guy comes over. He's got one of those weird looks in his eyes. Looks like he's been drinking all day. I'm like, here it is. Here it comes, mate. He comes up to me and he goes, oh, I just wanted to say, like, I'm a massive fan of yours. And I went, yeah, that's great, mate. That's awesome. He's been following your stream all the time. I loved it when you used to play. I'm thinking, does he mean matchmaking? I don't know. Anyway, and then he
so who do you think you were?
He warmly shakes my hand. He just goes, what's your name again? And I'm Richard Lewis, mate. He went, yeah, that's it. Yeah, love you, mate. And then he then went up and he then said, do you want to have a drink with me? He said, it's on my bucket list to have a beer with you. I went, yeah, all right then. So we had a beer, and then he started trying to get me to drink this ridiculous spicy chili shot. And I was like, look, mate, I've got to protect my voice. I've got to do a show. I'm not just here to get drunk. And I went, anyway, I really need to get a cup of coffee and wake up. And he went, oh, I'll come with you, mate. I'll just come with you. I was like, okay. He starts putting his shoes on, follows me out into the street. I'm like, right, okay, look. I'm kind of a little bit scared still. Like, was all this camaraderie just to lure me into a false sense of security? He's walking behind me. I'm like, oh, God. It's going to come right in the kidneys. It's going to be prison death. And whatever shop we go in where I'm trying to get this cup of coffee, I speak German. I'm fine. Like, I'd be like, going,
if you ever needed proof a man was evil, there you are from his own lips.
Exactly. So I'm just like, Entschuldigung, kann ich haben eine Schwarzkaffee, whatever the fuck, right? And he just goes, shh, like literally like putting his finger on my fucking lips. I'll order this for you. I'm like, I'm fine, mate. I'm totally fucking fine, yeah? Right? So he's just following me around ordering coffee. I'm like, right, anyway, I've got to go, mate. I've got to go. And he said, we'll come back and have more drinks, yeah? And I went, yeah, we'll definitely do that. Anyway, 5 minutes later, same thing with DDK. Huge fan, Henry G. Shaking fucking DDK's hand. Like, who the fuck is this guy? So, anyway, he knows who he is. But yeah, you did frighten everyone, mate. If you ever watch this VOD, you scared everybody. We were on edge. Just stop it. So they're the fans, Dunk.
I know.
That's the comfort you get.
And by the way, when I said earlier, and referenced in the original joke, that I wouldn't work a Rahim, which is the joke, obviously, that's obviously a joke, hence the tone, and hence why it was funny. That wouldn't be so funny as if it was a real statement, would it? The reason I don't explicitly say that normally is because anyone who doesn't get that that's a joke deserves to get mad and then be openly reviled, ridiculed, and treated like a fucking moron. So I actually wouldn't not work with Rahim because I thought he was shit. Guess what? After I've heard these stories, yeah, I wouldn't work with him now because he sounds like a shit professional and terrible comrade. So let's see what I did there, Mike. Comrade.
Yeah, I like that.
Anyway, keep going. I got a little bit edgy there.
Basically, the whole event was stressful, terrifying. The CSGO community it's not even the CSGO community, actually. I'll clarify my statement. I said, fuck the CSGO community. It's not the CSGO community. The CSGO community are all right, actually. It's the spillover from the League of Legends community that have come into CSGO that are like, oh, what's the cool game? Because I can't afford skins anymore, and I just want to be where the cool kids are. And and now I'm going to apply my 14-year-old judgments to everyone, even though the average age of a Counterstrike fan is higher, or was until all the League of Legends fucking assholes got it. So it's them guys. Fuck them guys. That's what I'm saying. Those guys can fuck off. They're ruining everything. So fuck them. Right, anyway. Yeah. So Acer Predator Masters, mate. It was a pretty sick event, actually. Like, apart from all of the backstage drama, the games were absolutely sick. Like, there was some moments on the stream that I'm sure people will remember. None of that was faked. Obviously, we're not going to do that. Really, just a fairy tale for Hellraisers, which is where I'll start talking about the event. When I first saw Hellraisers getting 2-0'd by Dignitas, there was a lot of talk about how Hellraisers, if they didn't get top 2 at this event, they were going to fold, or at the very least change a few players. So I was like, right, well, fuck then. That's definitely happening. You fail to beat, choke Natas, who've just come off the back of like a massive disappointing ESL One Cologne qualifier. You've got real problems. Then they beat TSM 2-0. I'm like, okay, well, TSM haven't looked particularly great at this event, They already lost to E-Frag. Probably it's just a flash in the pan. TSM not working too hard before a major. Then they beat SK 2-1 in some like attritional slog. They go into the last day and they have this ridiculous run where they have a 2-1, a 2-1, and then a 4-3 in the final. So they had to win, like, they had to play some unreal, like, fucking 12 maps on the last day. 13 maps, sorry, on the last day in a row without any sleep, rest, or anything. And they still managed to beat fucking mousesports. So I don't know what changed about Hellraisers, because it certainly wasn't anything tactically. They weren't doing anything super clever. They were just walking apart to the map and just out-aiming people. Mo made a massive difference, or Moo, as some people call him, but apparently it is Mo. He was just absolutely on fire, hands down their MVP, especially on the last day. But ultimately, it wasn't like...
There's actually a good CSGO player called Mo?
Yeah, no, go figure, like. But yeah, so... they hadn't changed anything. Everything just seemed to click for them at this one event. So I just wanted to get your thoughts about why that might have been. Why a Hellraisers that couldn't qualify for a major all of a sudden are looking like a well-beaten team.
That's the problem. I think it'd be very, very difficult to give really good reasons. Because actually, when you look at all the facts and the circumstances, you did a good job of setting it all up there, the context. It's that you basically, this is what will sound weird. You actually couldn't know that they were even playing well until the final because of the context of when they played everyone else. So they lost to Dignitas quite cleanly, and Dignitas is in terrible form at the moment. So you're thinking to yourself, wow, Hellraisers, I knew they were bad. I knew they had problems. But this is worse than ever. This is probably the end of the team. Like, they're going out in the bottom round in TSM now. Then they beat TSM, but they beat TSM cleanly. Like, it's not even like, that wasn't even like, I think like one of the maps was close or something, but that wasn't like TSM was like a back and forth war and like TSM's playing really well. So TSM's playing badly because they themselves just went out to E-Frag. So like you're saying, you're right there. But here's the problem. Then, okay, they beat SK Gaming. Okay, fine. SK Gaming isn't particularly good at the moment. They're very middling, Then they beat Dignitas. Again, we just described Dignitas isn't exactly in good form at the moment. They've gotten rocked by E-Frag. So you're already up to the top 3 positions now before you've even got them playing anyone who looked like they were playing well at the event. So they play E-Frag, who admittedly have been good at this event and had looked very good in every series. And even that's a close series. So once you get to the final, here's the crazy thing. They've only played 5 series when they get to the final. One of them, they got rocked by Dignitas. Yeah. Then they won well against TSM. Then the other 3, so they're the 2 extremes. Then the other 3 were like all close affairs. It's like 2-1, 2-1, 2-1, and you versus lesser opponents. And then, so you think to yourself, well, come on, man, it's best of 7. Mousesports, I think they start like 1-0 up. So you're like, this is over, come on. And actually the way it goes, like Mousesports like win the first map, and then they win like 2 out of the first 3, so they're at elimination point. And then obviously Hellraisers does this insane run where they just win all the maps and win like 3 in a row. Now the crazy thing about this is, if you actually add it all up, as weird as it sounds, as a one-off individual performance, it's fucking amazing. It's one of the best Cinderella stories I think I've ever seen in CSGO history. It's amazing what an upset this is. To win in a best of 7 out, to smash one of the best teams in the world, TSM. But it's actually a scenario where even the best performance they had shows the massive problems they have and why this won't happen again. So I'll give you a quick analogy to a different game. So people are going to get mad at this, Rich. But I'm going to give you an analogy actually to League of Legends. In the EULCS, the European League of Legends League, last split, so in the spring part of the year, we had this team come up called Unicorns of Love. And the thing with this team was they played this really weird super chaotic style. And when I say they played a super chaotic style, that wasn't like a conscious choice that this is the way we're going to play. You know, we actively understand that being proactive and forcing the enemy to react to what you do makes his decision paths a lot more difficult because there's time to it. They didn't do any of the stuff I just did there where you could describe what that type of style is like. They just played, and that just happens to be the style they played. And essentially they didn't have much strategy, so they just made the game more random. Now what happened was, they managed to get to the final of EULCS. So in theory, they were ranked as the second best team. Now, the problem was, in the regular split, they had a 50-50 record. In the playoffs, every series except one, they only won 3-2, or they lost 3-2. So they were almost 50% record in the playoffs as well. I think they were slightly above, so like 60% or something. Then the next split, they dropped off, which means, by the way, they just went back to the same thing, 50% record the whole way. And then eventually one player just left and said the communication is terrible in the team, everything's going to shit, and that wasn't even really a style. Now, the reason I give that analogy is because even in their best moments when everything was going right and their style was working the best, you saw that, oh, actually, I can sort of even see here that this is when everything goes right. So if it goes even like 80% of this, they're going to lose quite a lot of games, maybe be not that good a team, and that you've already seen the problems they have. So the reason I say that is because Hellraisers did that at this amazing run. So what happened was, aside from the TSM victory, none of these victories were actually massively convincing because SK Gaming is not a great team right now. They're not a world-class team. So, okay, you've rocked TSM, but now SK Gaming's taking you close. Okay. Then Dignitas, again, you're losing maps to all these teams. Then you look at the maps they're winning on in these 2-1 series. There's no rhyme or reason to it, Rich. Like they'll lose one map to one of these teams, then win it against another team while losing one of the maps they'd won before. Like there's no, it'd actually be better for them if they'd have just shown there were gods on 2 maps. Like if every series was like everyone let them have DOS 2 and they'd win that, everyone let them have, I don't know, Inferno and they'd gotten some cool wins there, then I could be like, oh, what's happened is they've mastered Inferno and they've done this change here. That wasn't the case. I'm telling you, add up all the maps, have a look at them all, and they can lose and get rocked, or they can do really well and convincingly play well on the same map in the same tournament 1 hour before. Like, so what that's telling you is they are wildly inconsistent. I actually agree with your very basic analysis of it, by the way, which is that essentially they did what Hellraisers classically always used to do, which is just have really good aimers, just take one-on-one duels and win the aim duels. That's it. There was never any great strategy to Hellraisers. They're actually the topic of one of my first ever videos in like the Thorin's Thoughts series was about this exact topic. Like they had no consistency, no map pool, and they just relied on having aimers. Now the problem for them at the moment is that their aimers are no longer super sick. Like if you're putting together your top 20 aimers list, they're not going to have many players on there. The one player I can say who did seem a bit different was the Moo guy who we were referring to. He seemed to have a very good event. Like he seemed to be the one guy, every single map it felt like he was good. Beyond that, there wasn't even consistency in their team. So again, when Cloud9 just came up recently, after the first event, I could literally break it down for you. Like I can tell you exactly where this team's good now. Freakazoid's going to have low frags, but he's going to enter in this way. Sean's going to have no kills, but he's the tactical mastermind. Shroud and Skadoodle carry in these ways. Nothing's a middleman, and sometimes he has a big game. I could show you breakdowns even by the scoreboard, which would make sense, right? In Hellraisers, there wasn't even any logic to it. Like some games, the craziest was, okay, Dosia used to be the traditional star of the team. He had like half the maps, he was sick here. Other half, terrible. Now, what's funny is, on some of the maps, Angel, who used to be one of the best entry fraggers, he's a guy who's been struggling the last year in this team, and he was having like god tier performances, but then he would have a terrible map. So again, it's the same thing, you know, right? Aside from Moo, actually, no one was consistent. So the entire thing was inconsistent. So what I'm saying basically is, listen, as a performance, as like a cool event, yeah, what a great, incredible run this was, which, by the way, would have been stopped in the final in any other format. They would have lost the best of 3, then they would have lost the best of 5. You know what I mean? Like, so, okay, listen, it's a cool event. They gave us this weird opportunity where somehow Hellraisers did make advantage of all the lower bracket, all the final stuff, and they gave us a one-off, very memorable performance. But unfortunately, it's not like, oh, you know, I guess you guys underrated Hellraisers. No, actually, I doubt this means much. Because remember, this is the team that did get rocked by Dignitas like a day before. This is the team that a week ago couldn't even qualify for the major, Meanwhile, teams like fucking eBettle are doing so, like this third best Polish team. So actually, let's not go crazy. This is a great one-off performance, but I actually can't give you any good reasons. Like, this is something great that they're going to build on and go forwards. I think this was just the ultimate example of how their style can work if it goes to its best. And if this is them at their best, by the way, and they still lose all these maps, I think you can see that when they're on a bad day, they're not going to be some elite team, you know?
Yeah,
that's pretty long-winded, but okay.
No. Fair play. I agree with it. A couple of points that I would pick out from that would be, for me, perhaps up until going into the last day, I was maybe thinking Dozier would probably be the MVP, but it was close with Mo. He wasn't getting a lot of frags, but every frag he got was an impactful frag. It was like an entry frag, or it was the frag that shut down a rotate that would have like got behind them, or he seemed to be positionally smart. He was taking the duels 1v1 and was generally getting the better of them. He was like, it was the best performance he'd ever had tournament-wise for Hellraisers, and he definitely needed it because you feel being one of the last players in, and a player that hadn't really played at that level before he got brought into Hellraisers, he would have been the first one out if changes were made, if they didn't get this top 2 finish. So he was obviously playing for his future. There's no doubt about that. And he rose to that pressure and he responded incredibly well. But I thought Dozier was super consistent. Like, he would, just in terms of like within a game, if people sort of rushed to where he was good for that one frag, usually 2. And that was how it was sort of working out for him. So he had a pretty good defensive side. He was like the better player on CT for Hellraisers, if you like, who typically don't have good CT sides.
Yeah, makes sense.
To your point about Angel, what was really interesting was he had some incredible games with the Deagle. And this was really significant for Hellraisers because what they were doing was they have this style where it's just like, I don't know if it's
all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it's because of where they're from in the world.
It is, mate. They're the famous example of just doing that all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like just like, hey, our real world economy is fucked, so who cares about it in a computer game? Like, I don't know if it's like that kind of thinking, but they just literally don't give a toss. They were like, okay, well, we've just lost a force buy. Fuck it, let's force buy again. And the only time they really seemed to have a bit of discipline about that was the final against Mousesports. But Angel with the Deagle was absolutely fucking sick on some maps. Like, I've never seen it. Like, he would just, he ran in and, 2 entry frags, no problem, especially on Cash. A couple of times, he just had some godlike moments. And that, for me, sort of all combined to basically drag Hellraisers kicking and screaming through. Kusha, who's somebody that I feel has been a little bit of a weak link in the team for a while, ever since he dropped the AWP. I'm not really sold on what he does in the team. He was the one that was sort of, because the desks were set up like old school, how it used to be, you could see each other and they were giving each other abuse. Kusha was up there doing the V for victory in their face, like every time they won a round, like just full on winding up the opponents. Like, and everybody that played Hellraisers, they were doing it back to Kusha, but it just wasn't phasing him at all. And in fact, he wasn't the player you even wanted to be phasing because he wasn't really doing that much. So all of these things just seem to really work to Hellraisers' sort of advantage. And by the time we got to the final with Mousesports, even though I'd have bet the house on Mousesports winning it, it was, like you say, an incredible fairy story. I was so happy for Hellraisers at the end because being realistic about it with all of the faults we've just talked about, this is almost like the perfect Storm event for them. I don't think they'll ever... Yeah. I don't think we'll see them win another event, not with that current lineup. So I'm really glad they had this moment. To ask you about another team that really, really surprised me and made my bosom swell with pride for the growing esports scene was E-Frag. Now, for the longest period of time, I was, wondering what are these guys actually going to do? Back when they were G-Play, they went out to the Star Ladder, and they had some high-profile results. They beat Envious and things like that. But it was all best of ones.
Yeah.
And the question was, could they be a great tournament team? Could they win series? Well, they showed on the first day a mental fortitude that I thought was incredible. TSM come in, the winners elect of the whole tournament, obviously the best team there by some distance. They go in, they play Inferno, they batter them 16-4. They're all laughing, they're all joking, they're eating spaghetti on the couch between maps. Everything looks like literally.
They were literally like Mum's spaghetti.
Yeah, I think I probably made that joke on stream. They literally, at one point, Cage and B just came over and was just eating spaghetti on the caster's couch because they hadn't eaten. And obviously, when you go to a Take TV event, Dennis cooks for everybody, make sure you all have food. And dinner was served. So even though they were in the middle of a series, they were just like, fuck it. we're going to win this one easy. Nom, 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 nom. Let's have some dinner, right? So they were just sat there eating spaghetti between games. Anyway, they lose the second map to E-Frag. You can see they're a little bit like, all right, guys, come on. Wipe that tomato sauce off your mouth. Let's fucking get going, yeah? And E-Frag beat them, and beat them fairly convincingly, ultimately. And TSM weren't happy by the end. It wasn't like all these people that are theorizing, they're like throwing away tactics or whatever. Like, they just don't care. There's no evidence to substantiate that at all. Like, literally, they were so pissed off at losing. So, mad shout out to E-Frag. Then they go up against Dignitas. You think, okay, well, they can't do it again. They did. They 2-0 Dignitas. Absolutely, just insane performance again. Bubbles that they've brought in was really good. Dreamer, this guy's unreal. Like, what a find he is. Victor had a much better performance here than he did at StarLadder. Then they go up against mousesports. They take a map off mousesports and then lose to Hellraisers to sort of finish in third, fourth place. Now, they took maps off pretty much everyone. They did. They took maps off everyone they played. They looked really, really good. They have this incredible style. Again, they'll force buy. They're a lot like Envious in terms of how they marshal their economy. They'll force buy, and it'll either work for them, and they'll out-aim you with weaker guns and win around and get rolling, or especially on the T side, which is much better than their CT side, same as Hellraisers. Or what will happen is they'll force buy themselves into oblivion and they'll lose a game. But I think this team can actually do some damage against top European contenders, and I hope they get to other events in future. I don't know if you had a lot of opportunity to watch them play, but if you did, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I did think they showed some legitimacy because they backed up the StarLadder performance. The problem with the StarLadder performance is it's the old thing of like the order that the matches took place in, I think made people overhype it a little bit. Like if you remember what happened was they came right out the gate at StarLadder and rocked Envious on Dust 2, which it is Envious' best map, but it's also like a map that's a famous upset map. Now it's true later on, like they beat like Hellraisers, but that wasn't Hellraisers had the stand-in. They actually got rocked by Flipside very convincingly at that tournament, and then they narrowly lost an Inferno to Na'Vi, which, Na'Vi's good on Inferno, but that's like Na'Vi's fourth best map or fifth best map, So even so, it's you're not even winning all the maps, and they were okay. They were close. That's impressive. But if you remember, they went into the semis, and in the semis, Envious just like took a massive shit on them, and we're like, "See you, I'm off into the final, mate." So as good as it was, like you're saying, it's just best of ones, and even then, it's not like they won them all. They won one big best of one and lost two of the other high-profile ones. So I was at the time, I was like, okay, you've shown something online. You played them close as well, so that's all good. But your win was on Dust 2, which is an upset map. So I need to see it at another LAN. So that's what we've done. We've seen it at this LAN. Now there's some caveats again. So first of all, beating TSM, no caveats needed. They are one of the world's best teams. And yes, after this event, unfortunately, because Hellraisers beat them like that, we're going to say there's problems with that team and will they recover for the major? All the rest of that stuff and what's going on right now in IM Gamescom where they've been beaten by the new Envious lineup. So there's obviously issues in TSM, but even so, the level of the players in TSM and what they're capable of and how strong their map pool was, this is an incredible upset win. This is one of the best of three upset wins you're ever going to get, especially when you look at the maps they beat them on, because they beat TSM on Mirage, which is like, has been, for me, Mirage was the map that turned TSM from like the choking team who was always like going to be top 4 into the best team, well, not the best team in the world, but like a team that could beat Fnatic every time, put it that way, because that was like a key, that was the gateway map to cracking Fnatic's dominance on the map pool, So suddenly every time they went against Fnatic, well, we have Inferno now, and we have Mirage now, and you know what, we can now play the others, Customs, Overpass, etc. So beating them on Overpass isn't as great because Overpass isn't one of the strongest TSM maps. It's like an outlier. It's like their 6th best map or something, But okay, basically the Mirage map, that really got my attention. I was like, if you can beat them on Mirage, that's fucking legit. Now against Dignitas, what they showed against Dignitas was very legit because they played Dignitas on Dust 2 and Cash, which are two of the best maps for Dignitas. And in fact, what we found out was the Mirage game was kind of a one-off. Really, it was Cash and Dust 2, which this team does work on. So again, they followed up on their Cash win against Envious at StarLadder because they managed to win Cash against Dignitas, good Cash team, one of their best maps. Then they won it against mousesports, and mousesports is a really good Cash team. mousesports is the team that, if I'm remembering correctly, I think mousesports actually beat Envious on Cash. So this getting consistent wins on Dust 2 and Cash, now you're doing the opposite of what I said with the Hellraisers example. You're beating top teams on good maps that they're good on as well, but you're showing like a consistency. You're good on specific maps and against good opponents. So that's very promising, I think, going forwards. Now, with that said, unfortunately, they did lose to Hellraisers, so it didn't, like, I actually feel like they shortchanged themselves a little bit there, because if they could have got to the best of 7 final, they would have had to play so many maps, even if they'd gotten rocked fairly quickly, because you'd have to lose at least 3 in a row, that we would have got another chance to see, like, you know, just how good are they against another. The key thing was, when you were playing mousesports, you were playing one of the teams that were in good form at the event, whereas the problem is we've seen Dignitas and TSM had their own issues at the event. So those wins on paper count for a lot, but we know those teams haven't played particularly well. So yeah, I think E-Frag was very good. I think they were pretty legit here. I mean,
do you think though? I mean, when we're talking pretty good, obviously they they didn't beat mousesports. Really,
no.
The scalps they had was TSM, like you said. You know, you've got.
I mean, getting the upset, getting that map off Mouse was legit, because Mouse is good right now. They don't have any issues. They're not underperforming at all. They're in their best form at the moment. So that was the best one, actually, in a weird way, getting that map there.
So my question would be to you then. I mean, is there any chance of with this? And I'll lump Hellraisers in a little bit with this, because you've already kind of dismissed. You've agreed with my assessment. I don't think we'll ever see Hellraisers do anything. I feel there's a lot more potential in E-Frag, for example, than I think. I think they can achieve a higher level than Hellraisers if they get that support, if they go to those events.
I actually just did my new version of the rankings, and when I got to the 10th spot, for the 10th spot, there was actually a ton of competition. And here's what's interesting. The competition was basically between Dignitas, E-Frag, Hellraisers, and Flipside. And each had 1 or 2 factors going for them. In the end, I plumped for Dignitas, because they had more decent placings over more events, and they had more single map wins, and you know they had more overall going for them, and they had some best of 3 wins over Titan in the past, so they had the slight edge here. But if it hadn't have been Dignitas, oh no, I think Hellraisers actually had already put in at 9th or 8th maybe, actually. So the others were like I can't remember now. So anyway, basically E-Frag were the next on the list. Like, if Dignitas drops off a bit more, E-Frag can get right in there. Problem is, they have to go to some lands. You have to realize one of the problems here is E-Frag isn't qualified for the next major. So they can't play at the major. So that's a problem in itself, because a team like Titan, for example, have dropped off. Well, they can obviously get right back in if they have a decent major performance. So here's the thing. I do think that they're one of the teams where, if I had to put my money down on teams that have the most potential, I'd definitely pick E-Frag in terms of teams that aren't in the top 10 at the moment. Like, the difference is, someone like Flipside, they just lost simple. They're probably going downhill a bit. Hellraisers, this is them at their best, and they've only just crept back in the top 10. We all know at LANs they usually don't win best of 3 series. They win the best of 1, you know. So actually, yeah, I would say E-Frag is the team with the most potential. Like, if everything went perfectly with this team, maybe one day this could be, like, maybe in 6 months this is like the 7th best team. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think they're going to go higher than that. I mean, let's not get crazy, but that's pretty good considering there were nobodies a month and a half ago, you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Legit,
I mean, I think being involved in the top 10, no matter who you are. I mean, look, I remember when Cadred used to run the CSS top 10, right? And how our format for how we did it, because I know we're going to talk about formats of top 10s and rankings a little bit later because of the ESL debacle. But how we used to do it was, everybody who was on the previous top 10 had to rank their teams 1 to 10 in total point. And if you were first, you got 10 points. If you were 10th, you got 1 point. That's how it worked, right? So everyone who was in the previous top 10 got a vote, plus the 5 people on the editorial board, which was like me, the CS staff writers, a couple of experts, you know. So it was out of 150 points, the ranking, and that was just how we used to do it. Now, if a team didn't get on that top 10 list, they go fucking insane at you. They were like, "This is going to cost the sponsors," like literally, you know, because it was such a big deal, that official top 10, even though it wasn't. How can a top 10 ever be official, you know? But anyway. So I know, like, being involved in that top 10 is a fucking big deal. And just, it's not like you're mediocre if you're from fucking 6th down. You're still talking about being in the top 10 teams as well. Like, out of all the teams that play, you're in that top 10. So if E-Frag even get into that top 10, I think they can definitely achieve that. I think that's a hell of an achievement. Now, I got time to sit down and talk with them at the event. Great guys. And they said, like, this is going to be the problem. The events that they're going to, I think their next event is Gamers Paradise in Slovenia, which I haven't seen the sign-ups.
Good, can it? I think there's a couple of decent teams there. I think like maybe TSM or someone's going, but I don't think it's like a weaker field overall, you know.
So there's that, and then I was like, well, what else are you doing? And they're like Bulgarian EPS, and we're like, well, you know, fuck your lives, mate, because you're gonna win that at a canter. You're gonna play Headshot BG in the final, and that's about it, really. You know, that's all there is. So I hope they can get to more events. I know E-Frag might not be the biggest organization, but this is a team that if you invest in them, they're going to achieve. They definitely will. You know, we even had the discussion on stream. If language barrier wasn't a thing, could a top European team find a place for a player like Dreamer? And the answer is yes, because the guy's a fucking monster. He's unbelievable. So I really hope they do get that opportunity. Just to wrap it up, obviously, the big talking point was mousesports losing. They looked godlike throughout the tournament. 2-0 Penta, 2-0 SK, beat E-Frag 2-1. And then, of course, they get to the grand final, which was a best of 7. So this attritional slog. They had the map advantage from coming from the upper bracket, though. And, of course, you thought Hellraisers were just going to be tired because they had, like, the lower bracket for the consolidation final, before that. And, of course, they ended with the game against Dignitas as well on that night before. So they went, they were the last ones out, the first ones in, and then they got to win 4 maps to win the final. That was why it just made no sense that they were able to do it. Now, mousesports looked great on some maps, but it's the first time I've really seen them mortal. And in particular on Dust 2, Hellraisers didn't have a strat. All Hellraisers did was they smoked and flashed middle, played for a pick. Whether or not they got the pick, they'd run around the map and then think, fuck it, let's just walk up short. Now that, when you're playing against mousesports, should be just a disaster. You're going to walk into this like tactical fucking crossfire and, Nexus on the map. The guy's an absolute beast. Just walking up short with really actually poorly executed flashes and smokes a lot of the time just shouldn't be a way to win. But actually, mousesports weren't able to counter it. And it was the first, Chris J plays at that car area, and he's so good, not just with an AWP, but he's like the best scout player in Europe. So even on the 4 spies or the eco rounds, short should be the last place on the map you want to go. But they were just doing it. And they had, I think it was an 11-4 half on Dust 2 as terrorists against fucking mousesports. And that was the first time I really saw mousesports looking mortal. I just thought, get some of your thoughts about this. Like, how much of a setback is it? Because they've been on this huge upward trajectory, and then to lose to Hellraisers in a best of 7 when you've got a map advantage just seemed so unlikely and so unlike the team that we've watched at events together.
As weird as this sounds, from watching the totality of the event, so the team I watched the most at the event was mousesports, because they're a team that I want to see at more LANs. This is like their 3rd LAN I've seen them at recently, so I'm watching them anyway, and I've been back and watched some of their games as it was. I still think they actually played, in a sense, the best of everyone at the LAN. Now, obviously, they didn't because they got pipped at the post at the end by Hellraisers by 1 map, even though I guess technically by 2 maps because of the system. But Hellraisers was so unconvincing in some of the lower bracket maps that they lost, etc. Actually, I still think mousesports, as a totality of the event, played the best. They were so convincing up until the final where they lost. In the final, you're right about the Dust 2 game. That was worrying because Dust 2 is a home map for Mouse. They're really good on it, and they're amazing on T side. So if they get any sort of decent CT half there, they're gonna roll. As they showed Cloud9 not that long ago at CSGO actually. So the big problem is this is exactly the sort of team that will fuck with a team like Mouse, because the problem Mouse has is they don't have tons of skill. Nex has tons of skill. Chris J's in really good form and is showing off his skill finally on LAN quite regularly. So there's 2 skilled players. Beyond that, they actually are at a deficit of skill compared to any team above them in the rankings. Any team top 7, top 8 in the world is way better than mousesports in terms of skill, because Dennis and Speedy are like okay, if not a little bit worse. And I think actually they're the guys who, for example, at CSGO played way above and beyond their normal level. They were having like great halves where they're not star players in any sense. Okay, so that was always going to come back down to earth. But the problem is, because like I'm saying, they're not loaded up with all this mad skill, and it's not like Nex hard carries every map. He's just a very consistently good player. The problem they have is their strength is tactics, and specifically Godby reading the game and adapting in the game. Now, the one sort of team that doesn't work against is a team where they don't really have tactics. They play free for all, and their whole style is out aiming you. Because it's going to, like, how are you supposed to read, oh, here's what they did last time and they did that? Well, they don't. That flashbang that came in now, the guy just decided to throw a flashbang this time. That wasn't part of the tactic. You can't read from that. You can't make good decisions from that. You essentially get drawn into just playing their game, trying to play an aim duel. And I don't want to play an aim duel. Here's the thing. we all know Hellraisers aren't a great team, but Hellraisers is a more skilled team, man for man, than mousesports. Obviously, no one's as good as Nex, but I'm saying man for man. Like, you go, okay, so Nex wins his battle versus whoever on Hellraisers, but then you go down the list, and they're going to win most of those battles, mate. They have most of those. Even Kuchu, we just kind of shit on. There was once upon a time in CSGO in the early days, he was like the second or third best team in some of the teams he played on. Player, rather. So that's the one area Hellraisers can beat you. Then you have to add this into the factor. Because they lost the final with the last 3 maps going to Hellraisers, after they'd already played 3 maps as it was and a whole tournament, there's a fatigue factor comes in eventually, mate. And listen, as cool as it was as a spectacle, by the time you get to map 6 and map 7 of a tournament like that, even for Hellraisers who've played all those tournaments, that's not the best Counterstrike ever played that you're watching right there. That is a battle. No. That's endurance. It's like if you have a fucking fight where it goes the full distance to the end of the rounds. You're not seeing amazing agility. You know, at that point in time, it's like economical use of like, okay, I can use a bit of energy now, better hold back it. It's like just surviving is the end of the day right there. So here's the thing. They're not going to be playing best of 7s again. That's not going to happen. If they play guess what? If they played Hellraisers in the best of 3, they would have won the best of 3. So I don't think like that. Like the Hellraisers thing isn't like, oh, we've burst the bubble of all the mouse hype. The mouse hype's still very much there. It's very much deserved. And oh, by the way, another thing, if it had been anyone but Hellraisers made it the final, I'm pretty sure mousesports just cleans anyone else up there. That's a sad thing, actually, is this event in a weird way kind of fucked mousesports because of TSM. Because if TSM is in bad form, the dream for Mouse is they're still good enough to beat everyone in the lower bracket. Then Mouse gets to school them in a best of 7 final where they have a 1-0 map lead. And they're like, okay, now we get another scalp, beat TSM in a best of 7. Instead, they were long gone, mate. So unfortunately for Mouse, you kind of got fucked. You were like, okay, we beat Penta. Yeah, no one cares, mate. But we did beat SK Gaming. Yeah, again, no one cares, mate. We beat E-Frag. They're barely relevant yet. We lost to Hellraisers. No, that's not good. So you know what I mean? Like, it just sounds bad. But actually, I think they played well. I think they're a really good team, mate. I love watching that team play.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same. I think Gobby's really shown that he's arguably one of the best in-game leaders in the world, if not the best in-game leader in the world right now with the change that he's made to that team in such a short space of time. So I'm absolutely, I was gutted for them, although super happy for Hellraisers because, like you say, it was a fairy tale story. Just one more quick point about mousesports. I said this on stream. I'll echo that sentiment here. Chris J turned up in a big way for his team in this tournament. He was absolutely sick. Sick with the scout, sick with the AWP, sick with the rifle, actually. Made so many clutches. He really turned up in the final as well. He stepped it up. And predicated on that, I've said, if I ever make the joke online J again, he's allowed to punch me in the face. I mean, first of all, chances are he'll break his wrists if he does that anyway. Yeah. So I don't really think I'm going to lose too much there. But ultimately, there's no way anyone can call him an onliner anymore, I think, predicated on his performance.
Well, no, he did the same at Sevo. He was one of the reasons why they were able to beat Cloud9 on Cash. He actually beat Skadoodle one-on-one in op duels. So, yeah, it's very legit. I have to say, though, when you look at his style of play, I still want to see a few more lands before I believe he's at this level permanently. Like, I think he's just had a couple of really good lands. Now, listen, it looks like he's gotten over some of his performance issues before. I think that's not a problem. He's going to be a good player, but I don't think he's going to have as wild performances as he had at these 2 lands because even the style of how he's doing it reminds me of Makalele. It's that super fast firing style, peeking out over and over. Well, there's only one guy's ever done that vaguely consistently at God tier level, which is Guardian. So he's a 1 in a million, So I'll have to see more before I really believe this is going to be Chris J every event. But listen, the average so far is looking really good. And I think he has fixed some of his issues in terms of the mentalist issues that were holding him back,
Yeah.
And probably being able to use him better in a new lineup, all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, Nex was godlike. I thought over the course of the tournament, pound for pound, he was the best player there. But
He's now had 3 lands. These 3 good lands that Black Mouse have had, he's been amazing at all of them, mate. Even if they lose sometimes, he's a really good player.
His performance on Cash in particular, which mousesports won 16-12, was ridiculous. Ridiculous. I think like 11 rounds in, he had 20-something.
It was like Olaf MS, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
He was in that fucking world.
Now he may not have over the course of the final. He was actually behind Chris J by some distance, I thought, in terms of performance. And it's got to be said as well, Spiddy, who had a pretty poor day at the office the day before, turned up in a big way in the final. So there were some maps where Nex was kind of I mean, like say, on his worst day, he's well above average. You know what I mean? So, we'd got used to next throughout the tournament, like dropping 40 frags, you know, just casually, no problem. And it didn't really happen in the final. Had it happened, they would have won easily, I think. So he was kind of neutralized by the Hellraisers style a little bit. But anyway, for me, pound for pound, one of the best players at this tournament. Pound for pound, one of the best players in the world right now.
Oh, absolutely. Like, for me, it's not even debatable that he's like a top 10 player right now. I think after these 3 lands in a row, listen, again, even 3 lands, we have to still keep seeing, because once you start talking about top 5 players in the world, yeah, those are guys who've done it at like 8 out of the last 10 lands, you know, those are guys who always come with the goods. So we still need a few more lands before we can really crown him like a god. But at the moment, he's basically headed where like Skadoodle and Shroud were headed during those Cloud9 runs, where it's like these guys are already entering really good territory. Now they're going to start, like, I mean, we've already done it. Now we're having to start having debates where is Skadoodle as good as Guardian? The fact we can even have that as a debate shows how far Skadoodle's come. So it's going to be the case soon in 1 or 2 lands where you can really start asking me something like, who do you think's better at the moment, Nex or Device? And as soon as that's even possible, you know the guy's a really good player. Because we're talking about some of the best in the whole world here.
Yeah, it's not like you're ever going to say, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Name a player you don't like very much. It'll have to be a nip player, won't it? All right, there you go. Who's better? Freiburg. There you go.
It's not even debatable, is it?
Yeah,
it's not. There's nobody except a rabid Nick fan who'd say that that's debatable, you know. And even then, you'd be like, you are aware we're talking about right now, yeah? We don't have a DeLorean or access to flux capacitor technology. Therefore, you have to talk about now. Like, but he was in every major final yet again now. That's
87-0, Duncan.
But my dad was there when I was 8 years old, so surely he will come back now. I am 25 and he has been gone for 15 years, whatever.
So anyway, final thing about the APM, actually. We should talk a little bit about TSM. What do you think was going on? Because I had a chat with Carrigan about it, and Carrigan said something that seemed kind of strange. It was just after they'd lost their opening game to E-Frag. And I said to him, like, you know, are you guys holding anything back? You know, the major's coming. And he said, yeah, it's going to be pretty grueling for us now. We need to win like 12 maps to come in from the lower bracket to win the whole tournament. You definitely don't want that before a major. Obviously, they've got IEM Cologne, you know, just round the corner, literally a few days away, which is why one of the reasons why it made sense to come at this event and almost treat it like a boot camp. But then he said, it's been really hard for us. He goes, you know, you understand this. When you're the top team and everyone's watching your demos, it's really hard once you've set the bar to then raise the bar again if you don't lose. And he says, and we've been winning all these games. We haven't got a lot to go on in terms of how I can come up with new tactics because I don't know how we can get beat. So he says, we need to lose. We need to get wrecked by a few teams. And then that'll actually be, the best thing that can happen to us because then I can come up with some new tactics. So they did lose here. And, you know, obviously they lost in the next map after E-Frag. So it was like, okay, everyone's talking about TSM. They're holding things back. They're doing this, blah, blah, blah. Or if you go the other way, they're looking really bad. They're not going to win a major. All bets are off. This team are terrible now. Something's happened. And, of course, neither of those are true. So what I was going to ask you was, like, first of all, why do you think they weren't able to do better at this tournament? Do you give any credence to the idea they were holding something back? And do you think actually that losing a few games to some decent teams before a major could actually be a blessing? Because that's what I believe.
Like, here's what's weird is there's like a positive and a negative to the recent run of events that TSM's gone to where they still haven't gone to many events. Like, let me think how many they've gone to. I think, okay, so when they won that first event was when they won it at the CCS, which was in like, I think it was like towards the end of, somewhere in April, okay? So quite a while ago now. Since CCS, they've only played something like 4 tournaments. And they've won overall. No, I think they played 6, and they've won 4 out of the 6 in total. Yeah, so they've had 2 where they finished like 7th to 8th, and they won the other 4 in total. Okay, so they haven't been to many lands. Now the problem is, if you're one of the best and you selectively choose when to go to LANs, and in theory you prep for that specific LAN only, and then you don't go to a LAN the very next week, etc., which I think they only did after like CCS to Face It, I think was the only one where it was like 1 week after the next, then in theory, that actually puts you at your ideal if you're a world-class team. You have time to prep, you have time to change things. There's not many demos for people to study, so you're not repeatedly playing someone and they're figuring you out, you know? It actually plays in your wheelhouse. Now, the downside of that is when you get to where they are now, where they had the problems at ESL, ESEA, but then they have that event where they come back and they win at Face It. Now, that they've said that they've had like problems where I think they said after after one of these events that, like, I think it was before ESL, ESEA, that they hadn't been practicing at all because people had been off school or finishing school or something. So basically, they haven't even been practicing. So the downside there is, if you're not practicing, etc., at least going to the events keeps you in match form. So there is an upside to going to events, which is that when you have something, you're sort of getting in field training on that fact it works. So the problem TSM has is purely consistency, and it's one of the few times that I can say that, and it's a real thing. It's real consistency issues. They're very good still on the same things, just that sometimes they have issues in the areas where they're still very good. Now, obviously, that sounds crap because every fucking shit analyst in the world and commentator says the word consistency after every team that loses who's a top 15 team. So they've abused that word, not me. But the reason why I say consistency is because, like I said before when I talked about the Hellraisers map, I think was the one where was it Hellraisers that I said they'd won on Mirage? Let me double check. I've got the page up in here.
All right, cool.
Let me see. No, it was E-Frag who beat them on Mirage, beat TSM. Now, like I said, to me, getting really good on Mirage was the key that opened it up, because TSM was always good on Dust 2. They were always good on Cash. They were always good on Inferno. But once they got Mirage in there, now they had like a solid 3 out of 4 they'd win against most top teams, and particularly Fnatic. That was the thing that all impressed us, you know. Now, the problem for TSM is that they've had Mirage be a big problem at all their losses, basically. So they lost on that in the first map against Na'Vi, even in the event they just won, which was the Face It finals. In the semi-final, they got rocked on Mirage, one of their best maps. They lost it to E-Frag here. They lost it to, I think, did they lose to Hellraisers? I think they did. Yeah, they lost to Hellraisers, admittedly in close fashion. They even lost Dust 2, which is like they're monsters on Dust 2. So I think there's some issues there, just purely consistency. And if I had to guess, I think over these last 3 events, I wouldn't be surprised if for all 3, remember 2 they finished in last place and 1 they won. Even if for 1 they won, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't have much practice. If they were just going off whatever they have, and it happened to go really well that time, and it's gone really poorly the other 2. So I don't think it's going to be the same at the major. I think they'll come fully prepped. They've got all this, as you kind of mentioned, by losing in this way, they've been shown the flaws they have right now. And if they're a good team at prepping, if they really are an elite level team, they'll be in really good form at the major. And I expect minimum top 4 at the major. I think this will all be taken care of, it'll all be fixed. But at the moment, what you've just seen is that after that super sick hot run where everything went perfectly for 3 events, there's been some issues, and part of it is they haven't been playing much. And then also, let's be real, I said this even when they were winning, it wasn't that they just got over all their choking issues and they were great. They got way better tactically, and they got way better on their map pool. That's what really made them better. So they didn't even have to win this one map here. They could potentially win on all 3 maps. They could tactically close the game out without having to worry about choking, etc. So I think they still have a little bit of that in them. They still have a little bit of choke. We've seen them lose close games. You saw them lose an overpass to Fnatic and got last place at that ESL ECA. So I think it's just a bit of inconsistency on their team, and it got to stem surely from not playing the fucking game. You can't be world class and not be playing and then not attend events.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we should read anything into it? Because obviously today was IEM Gamescom, and I'll be honest, I barely had time to sort of even pay too much attention to it. I did catch one game though, and it was Envious versus TSM, and of course Envious beat TSM on Cobblestone, which I know TSM have said to us, we stuck on Cobblestone. We expect to lose that game. That's what they've said. Which is why when they wrecked Fnatic on it that time, they were super surprised. But obviously, it's a win for a new team that's just been put together as a roster. So you don't think these problems are going to keep spilling over for TSM?
No.
Because
now here's the thing, like, put it this way, I also don't expect these results to happen again. These like last places at LANs, because basically, first of all, the last place at ESL ECA was really overrated. What happened is they got upset once on, I think it was actually it was Inferno. They got upset on Inferno by Keith Stars in a best of 1. Then they had to play the best team in the world, Fnatic, which they lost a narrow game on Overpass, and that's why they are out the tournament. So when you lose 2 best of ones and one's against the best in the world, that's not such an terrible performance. It's like you had one bad map, basically. Then this was the terrible performance. But this really is a one-off, even out of the last 5 events. So actually, I think this is the worst you'll ever see TSM. I think going forwards, in general, this is a team which should be a lock for top 4s in general. I don't know what happened at this one, but I mean, first of all, they haven't played a lot of these opponents. It's another thing where tactically it's a different matchup when you don't play the teams all the time. Put them against the field of NiP and Cloud9 and Na'Vi and Fnatic, and this team will do well. Like, you know that I think that Fnatic overall still has the advantage over the field, but I think TSM is, like I said, for the major, go ahead and pencil them in. They are a lock to finish top 4. And the only way I can see it not happening is if they get something like Fnatic in the round of 8 and then some amazing matchup. And even then they might win because they have a good matchup against Fnatic. So I don't know who, maybe Na'Vi or something. It's hard to even see how it will happen. I think they're a lock for top 4. And I think they're still a big favourite to win this major. I think they're going to be in the final. I think it's going to happen. I'm not that worried about this one-off, you know.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm not going to talk too much about IEM Gamescom because I think we'll save that for the next broadcast when it's finished and we can really assess it. So I guess at this point we can just sort of jump straight into the news. Now, Gamers 2, the Polish team, basically the other Polish team, if you like, apart from Virtus Pro. They, it looks like that's all, gone to pot. Just before, I think it was announced that they were going to be released. MISC, he went as well, so he went just before it. So now Gamers 2 have basically not got a CSGO team. So just a few thoughts about this. I mean, there was some people that were saying, because obviously this is Ocelot's organization from League of Legends. And for those that don't know, Ocelot was like, but back before the skill ceiling was too much for him, he was well, maybe not even then actually, but he was basically a flamboyant, a legendary European player. People really liked him, big personality. For whatever reason, it seems that the circle jerk is just against him right now, and everything he does is wrong. But there was maybe an argument that it was like he was just picking up the CSGO team in the hope that, without really knowing what he was doing, in the hope that they get to go to a major just to basically put his brand out there. So just some thoughts about this experiment. Do you think we'll see Gamers 2 pick up another team now? Do you think this Polish team is anything to be sad about? The fact they don't have support, or just whatever is on your mind, really?
The problem with the Gamers 2 team is, as a general, as an org, Gamers 2 isn't thought of as a big org. Like, you look at the teams they've had in League of Legends, it looks like they're about where they should be. Even if they apparently have invested some resources, they have no background, and they don't tend to get the players in League of Legends that mean they should be a world-class team or an LCS team. So they're on the brink of even being relevant in Europe in League of Legends. In CSGO, same story. They have a team that's like on the outskirts. Maybe if things went super well, they could one day be an E-Frag team, but it's not that likely, really. The problem is, in the Polish scene, there really is only Virtus Pro. There's Virtus Pro, and then there's a bunch of people who one day maybe they could get into Virtus Pro, like Michu or MISC. We all know these guys have some potential, but beyond that, there was Gamers 2, which was the people I'm talking about now, and then there's the eBettle team who've had this miraculous qualification for the majors somehow. But I don't expect either of those teams, if they stayed together, to ever do anything of note. Like, I don't think they're ever going to be even as good as an E-Frag or let's think who else has risen up recently. I would never expect them to get higher than about like 15th in the world or something, So they're also runs. They're going to go out in group stages of tournaments. If they went to an ESWC, they'd go out in the group stage. There's not a whole lot there. Really, the only interesting factor about those sorts of teams for me is, will one day I get to see one of these players be the guy who eventually is surely going to join Virtus Pro? Because Virtus Pro can't have the same lineup forever, guys. Eventually, someone's going to drop off a lot, or someone's going to have an argument and not be able to send the team, or someone's just going to retire. So eventually, one day, they're going to need another player, as they did when they got Snacks and when they got Bialy. And so eventually, they're going to pick up one of these players. So I'm looking at them in that sense, like, who's going to get there in the end? Who's proving it now? Who would fit into the team? That's more the interesting factor for me. And no, I don't think Gamers 2 will be that relevant, because I'm assuming they don't want to spend massive money, which unfortunately, if you want to get in the game in CSGO right now, you better have your checkbook ready. You better have like 50K to spend at least.
Well, of course, I'm calling them the other Polish team because that is, for the longest period of time, what they actually were. But there are some new challenges in that particular scene. And of course, that is eBettle. the side that upset Titan and managed to go to the major that's coming up in ridiculous circumstances with a godlike performance from Hyper, somebody who's been VAC banned and banned from ESL for cheating. So lots of question marks there. But certainly at LAN, you have to give people the benefit of the doubt. That's the way it works. That's the way our scene works. Now, eBettle,
he's been at tons of LANs as well, so I don't think he cheats at like every LAN.
Yeah,
so that's not an issue for me. He just had a one-off great day, you know. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, exactly. So eBettle have followed that up by winning Assembly Summer, which wasn't a particularly great lineup, but there were some half decent teams there. I think there was a max team called the Jinta or something, which I can't really pronounce very well. That did have some NIP players in there. Roccat obviously were the team that they beat in the final, and they did take them out from the newly acquired Roccat Finnish team. But eBettle did win across 3 maps. So. Are these guys the real deal now? Are these guys also maybe knocking on that door? No, okay, nice and easy. But I mean, we're talking about how like Hellraisers are coming back, and maybe E-Frag can get into that top 10. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm noticing that almost like the tier 2 and the tier 3 teams, they are getting closer to the tier 1 teams in terms of what they're capable of doing. I don't know if winning this tournament is a reflection of that, but I guess that's what I'm trying to elicit your thoughts about. Do we need to take eBettle seriously? Could one of those guys be the replacement for one of the Virtus Pro players in the future?
I suspect they won't be the replacement just because it doesn't seem like they're the sort of players that the VP guys are looking at. Like, they don't run the same circles. A lot of them have been around a long time, and some of them have even been in 1.6 in like second or third best Polish teams. And I think they're just considered also runs at this point in time. Like, they've kind of been overlooked, If anything, it's going to be like a Mishu type guy who gets a chance, where at least they play with him, they think he's good. So no, I don't think that they'll be the ones that get into Virtus Pro. As a team, I don't think they're that good, mate. I think they just kind of, like the Assembly LAN, if we're talking about real top teams, was nothing. They didn't beat anyone good there. In terms of the Cologne qualifier, they narrowly beat Hellraisers, who themselves, remember, now have just lost in 2 maps to Team Dignitas and have lost single maps to SK, lost single map to Dignitas, single map to E-Frag. So it was a best of 1 format, and they narrowly beat Hellraisers. And then they beat Titan, true, brand new lineup Titan that isn't particularly loaded with skill. It's absolutely brand new. Only just finalized roster like a week or 2 before, and in mega overtime. So again, it's not like you're rocking their socks 16-5 and say, "Oh, so clean, winning the same map every time." Patterns are emerging here. I think if that was their best day, I don't really have that much hope from you. Okay, well done. Cool, you got those map wins, but I'm not expecting to ever see you in the top 10.
Something like 50 frags in it,
which isn't ideal, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. So
I mean, listen, qualifying's legit. That's fair play, but I don't think you'll ever do anything more than
that. Just as a side note, a lot of people were kind of. I mean, look, there was some mega salty Titan fans anyway.
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously, then you've got the anti-cheating brigade. Oh, he's been VAC banned in the past, so he's obviously cheating forever now. Once a cheater, always a cheater. That complete bullshit Counterstrike logic that gets brought out whenever someone's accused of anything nefarious. I know you're a Titan fan as well. But this is one of the arguments that came up, and I know it's probably...
To be fair, mate, I'm not a fan. I only let you say that just because I know what the term means. Like, colloquially, yeah, I'm a fan as much as the team I follow, etc. But I actually always say this. If go back through history, you will almost never find an instance where I say I'm a fan of that team. What I always say is they're my favorite team. The reason why I make that distinction is because a fan is someone who will, like, actively take facts and deny they're real. Like, if you said to me right now, like, say I said to you this now, right, Richard? So I would look back over the last 3 months of LANs, and NIP only has 1 best of 3 win over a top-ranked team at the time, which I think was over Dignitas in a best of 3, over 3 months. Now, that's just a fact. But if you were a NIP fan, you'd be like, why are you talking shit on NIP? So that essentially, there's the analogy. That's why I'm not a fan, because I don't somehow...
So a fan is an abbreviation for fanatic as well, of course, which is where it comes from, which is why you have to be fundamentally fucked in the head.
No, they're just the team I like to watch the best.
Yeah, so maybe turn up to an event and not know the person's name who you're a fan of and follow them around and order coffee for them. So yeah, you're definitely not like that, Duncan.
Like I've always made this point, right? Whenever I talk about what I think is appreciation for the game, because I always say this, put it this way, every team that is really good in any game I follow, I like. I like to watch play, because the fact they're really good is for a specific reason, something about players they have or the style they have. And so as a result, I can appreciate that. Even if I don't like the players as people or whatever, even if it's not my favorite style, I can actually learn to like it in some way. That's why I could go down the top 10. I could tell you what's great about every team, what they're really good at, what the strengths are. But I always say this, the teams I like, who are the ones that are my favorites to watch, I would rather watch them lose an amazing game that was phenomenal than see them win a game that was total shit. Now, that statement there is something 99% of fans would not agree with. They'd rather, a NIP fan would rather see NIP win the shittest game ever, where they won 16-5 over TSM, and even they played badly, but TSM played super badly, than see them lose a godlike series to Fnatic, where it was the best play ever from both teams. If I was a NIP fan, if NIP were my favorite team, I'd rather see the second, because I want to see great Counterstrike. Yeah. If I like these people, I want to see them play great Counterstrike. I don't just want to see some base thing like, well, look in the bracket, the name NIP went further to the right. That's good for me. Like, no, it's a fucking game you're watching, mate. You have to actually see someone that's interested. Anyway, this is a little bit of a rant there, but
it's good. And I'm about to set you up for another one. There was a bunch of people who were like, oh my God, a betting site getting free advertising at a major? This is the worst thing ever. And Sir Scoot's ears pricked up and went, what the fuck is this? And he came out of his cryogenic coffin to just come and sort of moan about gambling for a bit. Love you, Scott. So what do you think about this? Like, is this something that we should give a toss about ultimately? Like, should we care about that?
About the betting site thing?
Yeah, the fact that a betting website in name is going to have stickers and is going to be now get all this direct advertising through the major.
I can't fucking handle esports, mate. People cry all day long about there's not enough money in esports, it's not big enough. And then they cry about stuff like, oh, you guys are unprofessional on stream and that's turning sponsors away. Then perfectly legitimate businesses are like, I'd love to invest millions into esports. And they're like, I think ethically and morally, should we allow these people to invest millions? Meanwhile, they'd let fucking Nike, who use sweatshops, they can invest tomorrow, mate. But do you allow perfectly legal betting, which outside of fucking Puritan America is actually considered just a normal vice that is taxed and perfectly legal for people who are over the age of 18, adults. Is that allowed? No, I think that's morally wrong, mate. But again, the sweatshops and the iPhones being made like little kids down. Yeah, that's great. Okay, got your morals correctly there. I can't handle it. People want to put millions into it. Listen, mate, I'll take the analogy further. I've always said this, half jokingly, half seriously. So you do realize there's no such thing in the world as dirty money, because money goes around everywhere. The same dollar that goes into the hand of the priest goes somewhere else when he spends it, sometimes directly to the Colombian drug lord into a little corner shop back into your hand. That's how money works. It's just a currency. It doesn't actually have any moral attachment, okay? So as a result, if this money is going to be spent anyway, and especially from money laundering, let's get all the criminals of the world to money launder through esports. I want to see $100 million prize purses sponsored by African gun runners, Eastern European pimps, and Colombian drug lords. If they want to clean their money, if they want to invest and spend so rich, spend a little bit on CS, put on a sick tournament, hire me.
Why not, mate? Why not? Wouldn't it be nice instead of getting, I don't know, five mice at the end, 5 blood diamonds? Why not? Why not, mate? Why not? Just fucking step it up. Step it up, guys. Whatever happened to let's get the Sinaloa cartel from Mexico. I hear they're doing really well for themselves right now.
Hashtag pay me.
Yeah. Hashtag, mate, the thing is, when you end up having, to fucking mule 50 condoms filled with cocaine through, a Gfinity event, then you got problems. So be careful what you wish for. But anyway, I want to clarify as well. Scoots didn't really come out of a hyperbolic coffin and start complaining. That didn't happen. Seems some people got a little bit confused there. And just the very mention of Scott made him jump in the chat calling everyone a wanker. So
don't bully him. Don't bully him.
Yeah, I better not bully him because he can't look after himself. That's the other thing as well. Raheem's my age, by the way. The idea that it's not like he's some tiny little 12-year-old boy. We won't go back to that. So I know, man. I definitely don't get it.
Mentally though. Yeah. Mentally though.
Bam. So,
maybe that's it, Rich. Oh my God, I've solved it. I know what just happened here. You were bullying him. Here's the thing, Rich. Okay. Rahim, I now feel so bad myself for the things I've said. You know the movie Big? basically, there was a little 12-year-old kid who found an old arcade machine, and it said, I am the Zorro. I will grant your one wish. Put in $1 Ukrainian or wherever he's from. I don't know, mate. The joke's going on anyway. So, yeah. So... So he puts in $1 Ukrainian. Well, it's not even called that. It's called like a herver, but it's funny if it says Ukrainian dollar. Puts in the $1 Ukrainian and he goes, speak your wish and it shall be so. And he says, I want to be a world-class loved commentator. And so the next day, he wakes up in bed. Huh? What's going on? I have the body of a man right now. Oh my God. He just starts casting. And the worst thing is when he's casting, he doesn't know fuck all about the game. He's a little 12-year-old silver noob. So as a result, he's just casting it. Ba ba boom, da. And everyone's like, oh my God, this youthful, joyous energy. Where's this coming from? I'm really relating to him. He's got this innocence about him. He's really feisty. And I've realized now he finally got to the big event, you know, and he hasn't socially equipped yet. He's not a man yet. He can't handle, you know, being around people who are veterans. People he knows there's maybe a little discomfort there. He's worried about what they think, you know. He's getting stage fright at his first big piano recital. Casting event in LAN, you know, with all new people. And it's like he's looking over to the side of the stage, hoping his dad's there, like, you can do it, son. Do it for Zazazora. Anyway. I think that's the end of that. I've run out of steam on it, Rich, but okay.
No, it's good. It's the thing is, half our audience are laughing. They've never seen Big either, so fuck them. But that was solid gold. But anyway, so the point I wanted to make is like exactly the point you made about the ridiculousness of sponsors. Yeah. So right. Remember when Papa John's
Rich, you should have actually gone up to Rahim when he was having those problems and sat him off to one side. You know, like that episode of True Detective where that Frank character was talking to the kid of that his slain colleague. He was like, son, he was solid gold, and you got that inside you too. I know you do. It's hard. It's going to be hard for you. But you got to take this. You got to make you better. Just like, you should have just word for word ripped that whole thing up. Because he's never seen True Detective, mate. They don't have that in Ukrainian dollar land. I don't even give a fuck anymore.
Look, it never stops, mate. So the point I was going to make was, right, people in esports historically don't give a fuck about sponsors or where the money's coming from. They don't at a business level. They don't at a fan level. They don't at any level. Because I remember when the Papa John's thing was happening and Papa John's Pizza came in and they were like, hey, if you support this, we'll pump loads of money into esports and order pizzas using this code and you're supporting esports. Now, the guy who runs fucking Papa John's is a guy called John H. Schnatter. Now, this guy, apart from the fact this guy's so fucking egotistical, the motherfucker has to put himself on the boxes. Like, if you ran a business, I don't know what type of business you'd run. Hopefully not a PR fucking firm for starters, right? But like something, right? Who would be so egotistical to be like, hey, Shields PR, and have your fucking face doing a double thumbs up on like every document or anything that went out? It would be fucking insane to do that. You have to have a problem to think that's appropriate, but he's in all the adverts.
Well, if it was Shields PR, the speech bubble coming off my head on the billboard would be like, which country next will have an existential? Which country will you find an existential hole in? That would be the quote, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, you've got to be fucking out of your mind to do it. But he's on all the adverts, like on TV, on all the leaflets, on the boxes themselves, the pizzas come in. This guy's a fucking nutter at the end of the day. Like, to even have that level of fucking, being so megalomaniacal, which can't even fucking say the word, to even have that level of ego. But anyway, so during the time that this promotion was going on, he'd been in the news for basically saying, Obamacare is going to cost us so much money. The idea of giving your employees like fucking healthcare, like, but it's just something in Europe that we get, just without even thinking about it. But in America, for whatever reason, it's some sort of luxury to just be looked after and cared for. But anyway, he was like saying, if Obama gets reelected, I'll have to fire everybody. Probably I'll have to scale back the workforce because the extra 50 cents or whatever I'll have to pay per employee so they can have Obamacare will fucking bankrupt my business, which, by the way, was turning like a mega massive profit, like it was making, hundreds of millions of dollars. So I said at the time, like, given the type of people that work in pizza shops, a lot of them are part of our key demographic, you know? Like, they're younger people that working jobs to get by. They haven't got a career path right now, you know, so they're in our age demographic. We probably shouldn't support a sponsor that actually is about taking away healthcare rights and is ultimately trying to pervert the outcome of a fucking election by bullying its staff into saying, I'll have to cut your shifts if Obamacare gets in, I'll have to lay you off if Obamacare cuts in. Like, if you work for Papa John's full time, who are you going to vote for? You know, when your future's on the line. So I made all of these points in like a fucking editorial, right? And of course, that was it, mate. What did I do? I'd fucking shit the bed, hadn't I? Everyone in esports was outraged. Why are you killing esports, Richard Lewis, by pointing out the unethical behavior of the people that are currently throwing money into us? Don't you realize Papa John's will come back and give us more money if we spend money now? Which has never fucking happened, by the way. This is years ago. This is like 2012 or something. Still waiting for that fucking fat asshole to come back and give us more money. He's never turned up. You know, it was just a one-off, like, you know, fucking advertising campaign, and everyone's like, yeah, Richard, stop. So, you know, the idea that they didn't even give a fuck about blood diamonds or sweatshops or anything else is, like, hilarious. But, you know, hey, if you decided to run a tournament, Duncan, wait, didn't he say that thing about Reginald? Sorry, can't support this. Take his job away. Ruin esports some more. Like,
there's no consistency, is there? There's no rhyme or reason.
People are just out of their fucking mind. So anyway, back to the eBettle thing. Like, I don't know why people were worried about it, because all of the teams that are there, like NIP is sponsored by a fucking gambling website. And if you look at normal sports, you know, you got 888.com on like loads of soccer teams in the UK. You can't turn down that money if you're running a sports team. It would be a fucking lost leader otherwise. Do you think some guys in Poland, in like the third best team in Poland, can afford to be like, oh, sorry, eBettle.
Okay. You know, you're asking me some risky questions right here, mate. I'm glad it's rhetorical, but sorry,
eBettle. We have moral objections to the concept of gambling in CSGO. So sorry, you were going to make our dreams come true, but not today, not for us. We're back to our existential crisis that Thorin says we are having, and that's it. Like, you know, it's fucking insane, mate. I don't get it.
I mean, come on. That's why I suggested. That's why I used the Nike example, because everyone knows Nike does like unethical business shit to become so rich, but no one would ever turn Nike down as a sponsor because they're a great lifestyle sponsor. So the thing is, even in gaming, there can't be morality in this sense. Like, okay, so instead, we all know every team can be sponsored by like a mouse producer, right? What if I told you those mouse producers got rich and still do to this day, selling shit mice to fucking little plebs that have gaming written on them and are like 4 times more expensive than they should be and don't even work very well. And meanwhile, other companies that do way better aren't the ones sponsored. So like it's very hard to find ethical companies in this sense. Now, we're not saying, like, obviously mine was a joke. We're not literally saying, yeah, as a result, get sponsored by like fucking Putin's Western outreach program for converting everyone to the new Tsarist Russian Empire. Like, we're not saying that, are we? We're just saying normal companies should be allowed to get involved. And to me, as I kind of joked about, I don't think betting's a particularly big vice, actually. I think it's just something you're allowed to do, just like drink a beer, do all these things. You know, I don't think it's like the end of the world that a betting site gets involved. Now, it's a problem if they get involved and suddenly this team becomes a top 5 team and suspiciously loses when the odds were everyone bet on them. Yeah, that would be a problem, wouldn't it? But it's not a problem right now.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't even know why that debate came up, mate, but it did, because I guess you have to moan about something when someone qualifies by beating Titan. I guess you have to. Anyway, let's get to the big ones, and then we'll close this show, because we've sailed dangerously close to the choppy waters of career end. And I don't know about you, Duncan, but I don't have a YouTube channel to live off. So
you're getting there.
Mate, 16k followers. Yeah, fucking awesome. I'll be living that fat life real soon. Pay me. So let's get to all right, we'll do this first. The NA qualifiers. I mean, no big surprises there, really.
No.
Cloud9 obviously overcoming Team Liquid, and CLG. I suppose a little bit of a surprise that they narrowly overcame Mythic. And obviously, you know, that was in the groups, and then they're both the teams that got through in the end ultimately. So just a few thoughts on this. I mean, obviously, Cloud9 were going to be there. They had the 2-0 against Elevate.
That was
CLG beat Liquid. That was fairly obvious. Maximum Effort fucked up and didn't really do too well. Just some thoughts about Hiko's team.
I mean, in general, like, listen, at that LAN, there was only 2 spots, which, by the way, I don't even like having set spots like that for a LAN, but if you're going to give 2 spots is the only amount NA should have. That's exactly the right amount. Cloud9 got one. That was a lock. And then the storyline should have been, oh, now it's a really interesting battle for second. It wasn't. CLG is by far the second best team. That's it. End of story. And they rightly qualified. So great job by them. They're still not as good as Cloud9, but actually, of the NA teams, they match up decently against Cloud9 every now and then, considering Cloud9's a much better team. So that's good. The big problem at this LAN was that a lot of the teams who were the lower ones, who people thought had a chance, had no chance. Like Luminosity are just crap. I'm sorry, it's just been shown. Maximum Effort, the Hiko's team, the ex-Neelam, just did nothing. They were really quite poor, and you can tell they're dead now. That's over. Then who else? Tempo Storm, coming off the hype of like, oh, we took Na'Vi close on 2 maps, winning one of them in overtime. Didn't show any of that here, lost to Team Liquid twice. And then the worst of the entire event, the biggest joke of the event was Team Liquid. They only beat Tempo Storm. They lost to C9, and then they lost, a close series, but they lost 2-0 to CLG. And now repeatedly, they've shown to me they're not as good as CLG. CLG is better than them domestically, better on LAN, and can do shit every now and then in terms of upsets against Euros. I just did a video about this today about Team Liquid. I just released where basically just go and watch the video. Like I outlined the fact that like there's literally almost nothing going for Team Liquid except that sometimes online in NA they do decently. That's about it, or have like a good win. That's it. They're just a joke of a team. So if you want to know more about that, watch that video. But yeah, I think that's like a quick sum up of the qualifier.
Yeah,
I think
I was going to say you've done a video on Team Liquid, so I won't elaborate too much.
I just literally prise open their existential hole and thrust in my enormous, throbbing, detestational, mandatory analysis tool. Sort of an analysis speculum, as it will. I turn on the light and I see that it's just shit all the way up.
Fucking hell. That's not just a dark image, that's like a genuinely unpleasant. That's like one of the ones I do, Duncan. It's mate, you're changing. You are getting like fucking Matthew McConaughey when he has to go back undercover. They used to call you Crash. Now you're just wrecked on ketamine out of your mind, staring at dead bodies for fucking. In many ways, Rich, nights.
True Detective is sort of like a blueprint for our partnership we created in its latter days, and it's like True Analyst. We are esports journalists.
Yeah, I love the fact that obviously in your mind I'm fucking Woody Harrelson in this mix, like, you know what I mean?
He's a likable guy, what can I tell you? Every now and then he goes a bit off, you know. He takes like a Twitter person who tweeted, Simple Ham has tweeted him, gets those fucking gloves on and he's like, listen, you can do this 2 ways. Either you go to jail. So yeah, I think it fits the characters, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Okay. You know, I guess everyone wants to be fucking Russ Cole, but you know,
everyone wants to be Russ Cole.
You definitely come out with the same shit he does. Actually, like, we've just been at events, and you'll just lean over to me and crush a monster can and say, "This event is a flat circle." Like, yeah, you come out with that shit all the time, mate. I'll see you in Carcosa. Anyway, let's talk about the final topic, and then we can get out of here. The Dubai tournament that ESL announced, right? Obviously, $250,000 because ESL have got fucking money to burn now. Just literally, like, I have $250,000, no problem. We can fund our own shit. And they invited 6 teams, 6 participants, which, as it turned out, were NIP, Na'Vi, Envious, Fnatic, Virtus Pro, and Cloud9. So the first thing that really struck everybody was TSM was left out. And funnily enough, they were still at the Take TV event when this was announced. When Device came up to me and said, have you heard about this tournament in Dubai? We haven't been invited. And me and Henry and DDK were all there. We were all hungover and we were like, nah, what's this like? And he told us about it. And I was going, are you sure you haven't been invited? Like, no, we haven't. I said, we spoke to your management. Like, you know, is there any problems on there? Any political stuff going on behind the scenes? He's like, no, we just haven't been, we weren't told about it. We knew nothing. So I was like, all right, mate, I'll look into this, you know. So got on Skype and had a chat to a few people. And then they were like, yeah, you know, like this does seem potentially ridiculous, but it's this guy Ulrich Schulze is going to be sort of explaining the rationale behind it shortly. So then he puts out this world ranking, which apparently is done mathematically. But I mean, I guess you could do anything fucking mathematically if you just make up maths, basically. Like if you just throw enough numbers, like you can call it a formula, if you want. Like, but it's just, it's still bollocks at the end of the day. It has no practical application. But so I was like sort of looking at it and looking at the rationale. And there were so many like inconsistencies. Like they were saying it's organizations and not lineups. But then in other parts of the top 79 teams they'd assessed, it was like Luminosity and Keyed Stars. The organization hadn't retained their respective positions, So like Keyed Stars, the Brazilian players obviously moved to Luminosity now. They just didn't even acknowledge that had happened. So that was they took the lineup there, not the organization. There was like just a bunch of like inconsistencies. There was stuff that, it's the history of CSGO, but it was only running back 12 months. Was there any decay in it? Anyway, long story short, is there a fucking top 10 in the world, right, where TSM would be 6th? And the answer is not unless you have got something wrong with your fucking brain. There's literally nothing that would ever make anybody put TSM 6. NIP above them? Is this fucking real life? Do you know what I mean?
Here's the funny thing. If someone was to say to you, right, Rich, the reason why, again, use the facts behind the system, they'd say, well, there is a system. If you were to count 1 year before, yes, but again, who would do that? Who, when asked who is the best now, would count something from 10 months ago?
Yeah.
In CS, you have to realise, people always use fucking sports analogies for this, Rich. Like, well, if Manchester United have players leave, their team's still considered a top team next season. That's because they play one tournament a year, and it lasts the whole year, and they retain majority of their players. In esports, I always say this. Some people complain, Rich, that I use the term dynasty about CSGO teams that win like 3 or 4 tournaments out of 5 in like a 6-month span. That's because 3 months in esports, especially in an open circuit like CSGO, where in 3 months you play 6 lands, 7 lands, is like a year. So if you stay on top, like Fnatic has returned to the top and overall been the best for like 9 months now. That's like being the best for like 5 years in the Premier League. You're a fucking dynasty, a god tier legend, like Manchester United level team, where even if you dropped off for a year, you got right back there again. That really is how long these things last. That's why they are amazing. So you can't have like that. To use the same analogy, if we use the same sort of year rationale there, that would be like ranking Manchester United as the #1 team now on the basis that they did win the Premier League 9 years ago or something, like it'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly right. Like, so. And, I brought this up a bunch of times to people. Like 3 months really is an esports year. Anyway, everything changes.
That's why mine is 3 months,
Yeah, exactly. Everything. But if you go from like January and then, by the time you're going into April, the landscape's completely fucking different. The game will have been patched a bunch of times. Players that were god tier haven't adapted. Lineups will have changed. Organizations will have folded in that fucking time. Some of the the tier 2 organizations. There's just no way you can do things on like some sort of rolling 12 months. It makes no fucking sense to do it that way. That isn't what esports is about. Maybe you might want it to get there, but it isn't there, and it clearly isn't there. And there's very few teams that retain even the core of their roster for an entire year. It just rarely happens. The teams that do it are remarkable, usually for that reason. If you look at NIP and how long they've retained the core of that roster, that's a phenomenal story just in and of itself, because it's so fucking rare that happens. So it is ridiculous. But then, so here's the next thing, right? So if the point was to invite like the top 6 people on that fucking list, right? If that was the point, why
top 5
9?
Because they said the top 5.
Why was it just arbitrarily the top 5 and then the top NA team? What is that? Why not just have the best teams? So why arbitrarily do we need to treat NA? Now Cloud9 have proven, that they can fucking get to finals. They can beat the best teams in the world. They beat Fnatic in a series at Valencia. Why do we need to give them a special dispensation to say, oh, well, best NA team, because NA seems so bad, we have to give them a hand up? That's really insulting to Cloud9, actually, if you think about it. Like, Cloud9 have proven they don't need that fucking special dispensation, that they can beat teams, that they'll climb up that ranking. If your ranking was done right, there's even an argument there that Cloud9 would be in the top 6 anyway. You know, there's an argument. I'm not saying that's right. But anyway, it just seems such an arbitrary thing to do. 5 teams and then the top NA because we really want to expand that NA market, guys. Do you want the best teams at your tournament or not? That should just be it for me. So for TSM to miss out, I mean, first of all, it should be in the top 5. Inarguably, they've got to be in the top 3 because that's where they are. It's not even a debate. They're somewhere within that top 3. If you want to get into the minutiae of where they're placed within it, that's great. Let's have that discussion. But any mathematical system that has TSM that low down is dumb. The formula is fucked. The equation is wrong. And then just this idea about we because we're so desperate to sort of tap into that NA market, we're just going to invite the best NA team, no matter who they are at any given time. So let's imagine a time, right, where let's say that Cloud9 team, before this run of 3 finals, had decided to disband. Let's just say it happened, yeah, like hypothetically. Yep. So who's the next team that's going then? The best in NA? CLG. Fuck, oh, brilliant, nice one. They'll have a great time.
Instead of TSM.
Yeah, instead of TSM. They'll have a great time at that tournament, and I'm sure it will bring you lots more viewers. So that could have completely backfired anyway. What a fucking... That's just bad. That's a bad business decision. Like, ESL have got to realise that. Now having that rule as just a caveat right there, top 5 from Europe, top 1 from NA, that at any given time, that could really backfire on you. In a distant future, you know, like let's say the Adderall drugs bans all kick in, the best team in NA could be like some fucking shitty, you know, not even invite team in ESEA because all the other pros have been fucking banned for Adderall abuse. Then what? Are we flying them out to Dubai? With their 50 fans, you know, we doing
that. They're also gonna be arrested immediately when their Adderall is found in their bag search because it's Dubai. So
yeah, you
sent to prison forever,
mate. Prison would be the fucking best you would hope for, mate. They wouldn't be able to play CS after that. They'd come back with no fucking hands.
Well, luckily, Rich, homosexuality is actually illegal in Dubai, so I'm sure you don't get bummed in prison. I'm sure it's not even a problem there. Don't worry, mate. Probably seen it happen. Yeah.
Fucking hell.
Oh no! I've just realised, Rich, it's the other way round. If it's illegal, all the people are going to be there. We're going to be, oh my god!
That's the problem. It's like they say,
what have I done?
If you outlaw guns, only outlaws will have guns or whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you outlaw bumming, as you call it.
Also, I actually did look up online as a piece of trivia, and apparently it is actually illegal to have sex outside the bounds of marriage in Dubai, even if you're in like a long-term relationship with like a girl or a boy, whatever way you go, or if there's girls listening. I've covered all my ground there, social justice warriors. Or if you're a transgender person and you have other... I don't fucking know. If you're a fucking zebra listening and you know English, whatever.
Just anyone.
Anyway... So it's illegal to do that, right? So actually, it's even worse to be sending teams like Cloud9. Because listen, some of those guys are pretty buff. They're in shape. They're American. They're affluent. They've got a lot of money. Those guys can pick up women. Half of them could end up in prison by the end of this event. Send TSM. Some of them are frail little nerds. They've got girlfriends who've got them wound around their little finger, you know. They're fucking sending them text messages after games like, love you, going into map 3, how's work? Kisses. I'll just put your name in my fucking alias to hyphenate my own name with your fucking name in the in-game online virtual world. Who are you? What is your name? My name is Neo Love Nastia. Like, what the fuck is this? Like, anyway, the point is they're a bunch of frail little nerds. None of them are picking up girls anyway. So send TSM. They won't be sent to prison for Adderall and wanting to have sex. So
Adderall and erections together at last. But yeah, so let's get him back to the point.
You notice they didn't invite Scoots because he can't actually operate without Viagra.
I thought you were gonna say because you know that he fucking would get arrested. Like he would, the
lechery alone.
Yeah, we'd never see Scoots again, mate. You can't even take him to the fucking Starbucks at Gfinity without nearly getting arrested. It's unfucking real. Yeah, I'll take a mocha latte, darling. What's your name? I drink your bathwater, love. He's never said that. He never said that. So
it's about you have to qualify that as though he would have ever said that.
So anyway, back to the point. This list of the top 79 teams is bullshit, Duncan. It's bullshit.
It's terrible, mate.
And it shouldn't be used to pick teams. at all because it's bullshit. And the fact that TSM aren't at Dubai is also bullshit. And I know you agree with me. So I just wanted to
luckily, as if to plug my own shit again, I also did a really long video about this.
I fell asleep watching that the other night, actually, mate. It was a bit creepy because I know you've got your waifu fucking pillow out there in Korea, but I actually fell asleep with my laptop on my pillow with your giant head talking about why ESL are bad. That was like what I fell asleep to, which is like probably is a low point in my life. I think I'm having a crisis. But but it was a good video. So, but just give me the cliff notes if you would.
Yeah, okay. The big problem is, I mean, you kind of I pointed out some of the things. First and foremost, like I analyzed, like, you know, the problems with the system from a theory point of view. Like, it doesn't make sense to do these things. I notice I always make it relevant to CSGO as well. Like, I don't just say you can't do this for a tournament, because, for example, there's one thing that ESL did exactly correct here, which is that I can tell whoever designed the system wanted to copy the ATP system in tennis. And they have almost an identical system to what they have here in terms of the tiers and how it's like half as much from the Grand Slam to the Tier 1, and then half as much again down to the ATP 500 tournament. And it's like they've done the exact same system almost to scale. The problem is that works for tennis for very specific reasons that don't apply to CSGO. Like, for example, there's a massive amount of uniformity as to which events everyone attends. Therefore, it makes more sense to have this hierarchy like that. You're never going to have an event in tennis which is worth tons of points, but which has the minimum possible field of like 3 good players only, whereas that can happen at some of the tiers they've created here. You could have a LAN where it only has essentially 2 top teams, 3 okay teams, and a bunch of total shitters. Meanwhile, you could have a different LAN that could have every single top team in the world, but not meet some weird arbitrary ruling, like have 16 players or a certain prize purse, and it won't get the same points even as the shit LAN I just described before. So there's all these problems in theory, and then I found loads of inconsistencies in terms of how it actually was applied. Like, let's run the experiment. There's all sorts of terrible ones. I mean, I'll tell you a couple off the top of my head. I think go for it. So let's see. I had a bunch that were really good. So, okay, so the organization points one. An easy way to show what a mockery that is to just take examples that exist now and find out where these teams would be ranked if situation X happened. So I go through this in much more detail in my video if you want to hear every possible breakdown. But here's like a couple of good examples for you to show how ridiculous this is, okay? So if Fnatic's players, all 5 of them, left Fnatic tomorrow, and Fnatic recruited the players that are in LDLC White right now as their lineup, then the new Fnatic team, who was really the LDLC White players, would still be ranked 7th in the world. Meanwhile, the Fnatic players who left would be ranked 8th in the world. Think about that. The same lineup of Fnatic, the Swede Olof Meister, they would be ranked 8th in the world. The LDLC White players would be ranked 7th in the world. That doesn't even make sense in anyone's world, does it? What is that system? And you could get into that, by the way, in itself. But the problem with that is, again, that works in a sporting sense. Yes, in a real sport, you have to scout the players, train the players, provide extra things for the players. In CSGO, you book the player's flight, pay him a salary, and that's about all you do, mate. That's it. You don't even really nowadays still provide coaches necessarily. You don't have any sort of rehabilitation thing. If a player becomes shit, you just cut him. You don't put him on the bench and work with him. You don't do any of the things that would mean that an org maybe...
That's the thing as well. You don't even have a squad, really, do you? You don't even have a squad in this sort of thing. Like, part of the reason why this is another ridiculous system is that, you know, you can have depth of a squad that sort of elevates you. Like you say, you can swap players in and out. A player can have a bad season but still be part of a squad when he was godlike a year ago. It's like you say, in CS, you just play as shit, fuck it, cut him. Team shit, fuck it, cut them.
Essentially, they've taken a lot of sporting principles that have a logic to them, but haven't understood the logic of why it works in that sport, and they've just tried to jam it into CSGO where it doesn't work, unfortunately. So I'll give you another one to show you like another ridiculous one. Let me see. Okay, the Envious LDLC one. That's another good one for org points. Because Envious left and went and joined Envious, the LDLC White team right now has all the points of LDLC up to MLGX Games Aspen. So they're ranked 15th in the world, even though they've done fuck all ever. They've been like 2 LANs and finished last place. That's it. And they're ranked 15th in the world. So there's all sorts of problems. I mean, I think this system in general is very flawed. Basically, to cut since most of my examples in my video, I don't want to like go too ham on it here. I've given a lot of the examples. Definitely. But here's the thing: in general, as a resolution, this system doesn't work, and there's very obvious reasons it doesn't work. Now, what's interesting is at the end of the video, I kind of in an offhanded manner said they should just hire an expert. Then I said, like, I mean, ask me. Well, I guess don't ask me because I don't like you, ESL. Like, don't ask me. And then I thought, actually, no, that's unfair. Like, the thing is, because I actually want CSGO to improve, and here's the key point I'm going to make now about this ranking thing. The reason why it's a big deal is because this isn't just this isn't Thorin's rankings, where at the end of the day, they don't affect reality. Thorin just says he has this team ranked 5th, and nothing changes in the world. They're going to use this to invite teams to the events. That's what the initial story was about. So if they do the rankings wrong, they're going to fuck over really good teams now, like Cloud9, like TSM, and not get them invited to events. Meanwhile, someone like NIP, as long as the pass still applies, will get invited over that team. So that's unfair. Now, the point is, I would have helped them in the sense that I'd like to make the scene better so those teams don't get fucked. If I can help those teams not get fucked, I'll do it. So ESL reached out to me. Now we haven't had any discussion yet. So don't start giving them a fucking medal or like Time Man of the Year award for reaching out or whatever. Nothing's happened yet. They haven't done anything. But essentially, I'll tell you what I'm going to tell them. Because one thing is, I'm not going to co-sign any system I don't agree with. So if they don't want to do any of the stuff, end of story. They're not working with me. But I'm going to tell them 2 basic scenarios, okay? This is what I'll explain to them. And obviously, I'll go into more detail with them. There's 2 ways they can fix this. Number 1 is either forget ranking points, don't have points, and essentially do a different version of my system, which is don't have Thorin's rankings, have a panel of 10 experts who all vote, and then the aggregate of it becomes the rankings. Because the good thing is, as you pointed out, anyone who's a hater of TSM might be like, I think they're only 3rd best. No one will be like, they're 6th best. So I think someone might think they're 1st best, someone might think they're 2nd best, someone might think they're 3rd best, but no one's going to have them 6th. So experts, in that sense, cannot be as wrong as this arbitrary ranking system. On the other hand, if they don't want to go that route, which I suspect they don't, they want to go with a ranking system because they think in their minds that it's fair. It's actually not fair, by the way. You're just using your judgment to, instead of pick the best team, to pick the ranking system and arbitrarily sign. But you're still making the same choices using your own expert opinion. You've just used maths to obfuscate it and thinking, oh, you can't argue facts, mate. You can. If you torture the numbers, they'll tell you anything. So say they want to go the ranking point. There's a way to do that too, Rich, which is what they have to do is tweak some of these factors like I've told you, where it works for tennis, but you have to bring some of those numbers in bounds, get rid of org points, and then what you have to add in, it's going to be really complicated. This is why I wouldn't suggest they do it. If you want to do points, basically, the way you can make it work in CSGO is you're going to have to not only be points for a tournament, but it's going to have to be based on an ELO system, where each tournament's points, yes, there's a certain tier where you can't, if you're a major, it's worth more anyway. But outside of the tier, a percentage of how many of the points goes to a tournament is going to be based on who attends the tournament. And so if there's a tournament which has all the qualities of like tons of prize money, it's not actually a major, but it has like a couple of good teams, but it doesn't have the best teams, you won't be able to win as many points by coming 1st there as a tournament in the same tier, but that has every top team there. Because then the ELO system will mean there'll be more to win and more teams to beat. So it's going to be very complicated, but that's the only way I can do it in terms of points. And by the way, you'll notice there, if you actually logically think it through, all I've done there is taken what I'm doing with my expert knowledge and my system and just found a way mathematically again to make it work. So at the end of the day, the question is ESL hung up on the idea a computer has to eventually calculate the winner, even if they put in all the initial conditions? If they are, I've got a way we can approximate what an expert would do. But you can see what I mean. I think they're the 2 obvious paths you should go.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think the best way to do it is to have, like you say, an expert panel. They all put their votes in, you aggregate it, and then that you would imagine that isn't going to lead to any ridiculous anomalies. Like that. There might be a team that could arguably 3rd at 4th. I think that's like the worst case scenario.
The thing is, you can have the expert panel tomorrow and we can fix this instantly. We can fix it tomorrow and we can have a great ranking and no one will complain, except they'll complain in the way they're supposed to complain. Like they complain for my one, like I think they should be 4th instead of 5th. That's great. That's exactly the discussion we want. We don't want the discussion where 100% of people are like, oh my fucking God, what an outrage. You've ruined CS because this team's 10 placings outside of where they should be. So here's the thing. The reason why I think the expert panel is good is because you can do it tomorrow and we all know why it makes sense and it'll work. If you do the one I said there, the big key issue is you are just programming a computer to do what we're trying to do already. which is going to be very complicated. It's like this. Essentially, designing a point system to tell you who the right teams are when you're the one who designed the system and say what qualities make a good team is sort of like saying that you want, say, a sort of like a lonely scientist who wants someone to love him, programming a fucking computer to say, I love you. And then when it says, I love you, go, at least someone loves me. It's like, you programmed it to say that, mate. Like, that doesn't work. Yeah, no one loves you. You just made that computer say that. Like, you could also program it to say, I hate you.
Scenario that is as well. I just want to say, like, that's like working in esports in a nutshell.
By the way, that's actually a metaphor for ESL and the German staff that they have. Just a bunch of lonely computer science majors programming robots to say they love them, but esports metaphor version, you know.
Yeah,
and we don't, mate. Because I'm actually hacking the system, like Ghost in the Shell, and I'm saying I hate you.
It's all academic anyway, because as you saw from that guy's tweet, he even said, hey, fans, what do you think? Should we expand the tournament? Like, hey, guys, we're so cool. Like, they're trying to turn it into
anyone like free money? Does anyone like money, guys?
Yeah, it's like just the sheer, like, insanity of doing it. Like, you clearly fucked up here. And there's only two ways that you can really look at the fuck up. Like, I don't even know if they were ever going to reveal this arbitrary top 10 thing. Like, probably explains why it's so fucked up. Maybe they just rushed it out as like an explanation. They were like, fuck, we got to explain this. Because the only two reasons, really, you could have left TSM out were either incompetence, like you genuinely didn't think that they were in the top 5, or you forgot about them, or maliciousness, like maybe ESL have been in a meeting with Reginald, or, you know, and not liked it, or, you know, just whatever, right? Like, some political reason not to invite them, or maybe you think, well,
now I'm starting to be on their side a little bit. Maybe I can understand. I couldn't figure out how they couldn't have invited them, Rich. But if they did get in a meeting with Reginald, it's like that is a pretty compelling reason, you know. I mean, fuck that guy ever having success. You don't want to contribute to it, you know. I don't want to co-sign that in any way or be a part of that. So we're not going to invite you to our event. We're inviting Nip. Freiberg's a good guy. King of banana.
So there you go, mate. So you have.
I have one point to make, by the way, Rich. One point we didn't make, which even though it's all in the video, this is one I want to make on air here because it's really important. One thing I did not like, listen, the rest of it is just incompetence. ESL didn't think it through. They didn't have any experts and no one checked this before it went out the door. But one thing I don't like, because it's fucking spiteful and actually I think ethically wrong, is the way they made the tier system. So I'll tell you how the 3 tiers work very quickly, Rich. So there's only 3 tiers, which in itself is a problem, by the way. In my system, if you're going to have tiers, I'd have like 6, so we could actually make this work. And then even within tiers, I'd have an ELO system deciding the points. So they only have 3 tiers. Here's the requirements to be grand, which is essentially a major, okay? At least 4 of the top 6, an additional 4 of the top 12. So, okay, you have to have a certain level of team there. A total of 16 plus participants, an offline final, and at least 250k prize money. So first of all, you'll notice that was a way to awkwardly jam ESL, ESEA Pro League in with the majors there, even though it's less competitive than some tournaments that are tier 1. But let's forget that for a second. They've kind of bent the rules for their own tournament, which isn't as competitive as some of the tournaments they're going to give less points to make it better. So they've helped themselves out. And then what did they do to other tournaments? Well, there's 2 more tiers, Rich. Tier 1 is similar. It's 3 of the top 6 and an additional 3 of the top 12. So 1 less top 6 and 1 less top 12. Total of 16 participants, offline final, but no prize money. So you're thinking, okay, that's fair. That's going to cover the majority of tournaments there. Here's the problem. Once you get to tier 2, you're going to see the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 is the point I'm going to make here. Tier 2 is only 2 of the top 6, 2 of the top 12, and just at least 6 plus participants. Now, the problem is tier 1 and tier 2, the differences there is 1 extra top 6 and top 12 team. You have to have 8 plus at least more teams there and an offline final. So basically, what they've done there, Rich, if you actually look at the practical world of application of this, is get all these tournaments that are tier 1 that have an online season get to be tier 1. They're all fine. They have the 3 teams. They have the 3 additional. Because they have an online season, they have 16 plus participants. If you're Gfinity, fuck you. You're tier 2. Even if you're like Gfinity Spring Masters 2, the one that had all those sick teams, Na'Vi, Fnatic, Virtus Pro, NiP, all these teams there, fuck you. You're counted as an online tournament. Because tournaments that don't have an offline final and only have 6 teams there get to be the same tier as you, same points as you. So basically, they've not only helped themselves out, boosting their event beyond where it should be, they've essentially taken Gfinity and said, oh, since you don't exploit the fucking teams and make them play 3 times a week, fuck you, you're counted the same as online tournaments.
Yeah. Yeah. I know, but yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and that's the other thing as well. Let's not ever pretend that politics itself wouldn't get involved in the tier system. Like Gfinity have had a bunch of sick events lately, and but they're always going to be tier 2 because we're ESL and we're number 1. Like
the lowest tier, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Which it's insane. They're paying for the top teams to go to their event. They fly them out there, so obviously the top teams are going to be there. So it's like,
and by the way, with that system there, that literally in next year, that means that you could have Copenhagen Games be tier 1 and Gfinity's grand final be tier 2.
Yeah. Just shows you, doesn't it? I mean, look, I've said, like,
I'm a bit skeptical of that. Like, here's the thing. That's the one area I don't believe their system, Rich. The rest of the system, I think they just put the numbers in. Like, they designed the system and didn't bother to look at what the results it spat out. And they thought, well, whatever it spits out, it's fair. What they did here is obviously reverse engineer what they want. Fuck over a competitor, give themselves a leg up. I mean, that's just what they've done. I mean, the idea that there can only be 3 tiers. And so if I have a tournament, right, Rich, here's my tournament I'll create for you now. So I'm going to have a tournament that has all 6 of the top 6. It has, I'll put in the next 5 top teams. So I have the top 11 teams in the world, Rich, but I don't have 16 plus, okay? So I can't be tier 1 and tier 2. And I have $249,000 in prize money. So again, even if I'd had the top 16, I couldn't be tier 1, I'd be tier 1. I couldn't be grand, I'd be tier 1 there. And I'm going to have an offline final, but I'm still going to be counted as an online tournament essentially there. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
All I've done is a tiny little, there's no gradation. It's like a massive jump. Like
it
literally
does seem
goes
weird as well,
though.
Have you noticed how, like, all the criteria for what makes you a tier 1 event is all the stuff ESL does as a benchmark?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Weird how that works, isn't it? Like, how we've got $250,000 a year. No, you can't be tier 1 then. Fuck you. Sorry, mate. We're setting the standard here. This is what I mean. This is what I hated, right? It reminds me of when, you remember when UKESA was around, the UK fucking Esports Association, and they literally woke up one day, made a Wikipedia page for themselves, and declared, we are the official governing body of UK esports. Who the fuck has bowed to give you that power? Because no one in the scene did. They just said arbitrarily, like, that's us now. And this feels like what ESL are trying to do here with this ranking is they're setting some sort of standard about what tier 1 and tier 2 events are that don't conform to anything that me or you would believe from attending events. Like, what again? Like, why $250,000? Why is this the benchmark? Why is this the benchmark? Could it be because ESL have budgeted that to be the bare minimum they'll have at all their CSGO majors or CSGO events from here till whenever they get bored of supporting CSGO? Could that be it? Probably. So I don't know, dude. I said, like, when they got in touch with you and were like, hey, do you want to work with us on a ranking thing? I was thinking this could be good. This could be part of the healing process. Build some bridges. Maybe me and you get to do a major one day.
It could be, mate. Still could be. But yeah, nothing's happened yet.
Yeah, but equally, I got to say, like, it's like you said, I wouldn't put my name on something I wasn't comfortable with. I wouldn't fucking, not like the fucking George Foreman grill that just, burns someone to death or whatever. Yeah, but whatever, mate. I'm fucking skint, yeah? You know what I mean? I haven't boxed in years. I need my grills. So you just sign it. You wouldn't do it, would you? We're active in the scene. We get to go to plenty of events. It's not like we're desperate for the money that we would need to sign off on something that completely undercuts everything.
Oh, and by the way, I'll just put this out there now, Rich. I am as genuinely open to working with them on this and suggesting of things and hearing their feedback and giving them more advice and just consulting with them very basically. I'll do it for free. I'm not going to ask them for money or whatever. That's all fine. I just want the tournaments to be right. But I will put this out. Because I know they've already gotten credit for just essentially sending me a tweet, which I hadn't even responded to yet, because they've gotten maximum credit, if they don't listen to anything I say and their ideas are stupid and they refuse to do anything logical, I'll openly come out and say they didn't listen to anything I said, I'm not at all a part of this, and I'm not co-signing it at all, because I'm not going to give credibility to something I think is totally fucked. Because actually, I hate that idea. People do it in esports, and I really dislike it. Like in League of Legends, okay, this doesn't affect ranking of anything, but in League of Legends, the company who makes the game, their news site, LoL Esports, has a power ranking they do of all the best teams in the world. And the way they got credibility, okay, is they invited all these experts from every region, real people who really know those regions, right? But what happens is those people feed their opinions to one guy, and he has veto power. So what happens is when he vetoes it and puts utterly stupid people there, then if you know as a public person, wait a minute, an expert from that region is involved, the implication is you think the expert's an idiot. So I'm not going to be a part of that. So listen, I'm not saying this is like a threat. I want it to go well. I want it to be better. I want it to be in the future so we don't ever have to do this again. So that if ESL has someone 6th who I think's 5th, that's not a big deal to me, mate. We can discuss why, but I'm not going to be like, you idiots who are ruining the scene. At the moment, this ranking potentially can ruin some of the upcoming CSGO events. So I just want to fix that, make it better. But I'm just putting that out there. So just basically.
No. And just to underline how ridiculous that was, when that last power ranking went out, and I think they got absolutely crucified for it, and they said, like, how can you possibly think this? He said, what was it? It is the difference between Vox Dei and Vox Populi, meaning that he was the voice of God. That's what the guy... I mean, Riot employees, yeah? Like, who knew, yeah? Who knew they were all fucked in the head? But anyway, so I think we can safely say that Thorin is going to try and, help them out. But I agree with you, mate. If it's unfixable and that's just a tweet they put out there basically to chill you out, you know what I mean? Like, fucking hell, Thorin's going ham here. Just tweet, humour him. If it's something like that, yeah, you absolutely should go crazy. But I agree with you. If they're going to use a ranking system to pick what teams go to events, it's got to be right. It's got to be on the money. Because
by the way, Rich, yeah, don't think that I think I don't expect credit for this. I don't need credit for it, because here's the thing, Rich. The people who hate you, they always win in their own mind. So, for example, okay, if I hadn't have worked with them, they'd go, you only criticise ESL because they banned you for the racism. And then, now that I'm working with them, I could be like, well, I'm working with them now for free, helping them. They'd be like, yeah, but you would do that to cover up the fact that you're racist. And it's like, you can't win. So I'm not worried about that, mate. They don't even have to credit me, but if they fix it, that's all I care about.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And it's like I was saying, it's got to be right. Teams like TSM don't deserve to miss out on big events because of some flawed mathematic formula. That's ridiculous. That's not how it should be. Anyway, we've ranted enough about that. Obviously, go and check out Duncan's video. It's in his YouTube channel, which is Thorin, but with 3 O's. You can't miss it. He's pumped out a bunch of videos lately. Just when it looked like he was... I'll start doing the 30-minute videos again. He's gone fucking ham. Every video is like an hour long. It's just like, he's gone back to his roots. So there's lots to listen to. Go and check that out. And obviously as well, definitely go into alphadraft.com where you can draft. I'll do a Thorin style plug, shall I? At the end. You can draft fantasy teams for CS and League. You might want to. Might not. Anyway, about fucking Team Liquid, yeah, they're shit, right? There you go. There's your plug, right? So, but no, they're really good. They're the go-to place to be doing fantasy drafting. They've already given out a bunch of fucking money, and they're awesome. And like they say, they let us go absolutely ham in this podcast. The feedback always is, we're going to be that firewall between you and the outside world. We're going to protect you and stop anyone, shutting this down. So, and it seems to work, and people seem to like it. So support Alphadraft for that reason, if for nothing else. Any final thoughts from you, Duncan, before we wrap up for the night?
No, I think we've covered a lot of good stuff there. Yeah. I hope this podcast in general keeps to growing. I think we're gradually turning the tide, because I know, listen, I get it, that anyone who first heard of the concept, or even worse, only watches the League of Legends one, will think, it must only be stats. Whereas obviously we haven't even talked about stats this week, but it's sponsored by a company who does a fantasy site, and if you want to play it, you go there, etc. And they are, by the way, they're the only reason this exists right now. I mean, maybe we would have done it one day, but they put together the vehicle to where it makes sense in terms of our careers. They give us a platform, and they edit it, or we don't have to do anything. Basically, we turn up, talk a load of bollocks on mic, and we get paid at the end of it. So I think it's a cool concept, and I hope we can continue in the future with it. So cheers, Alphadraft. Pay me, even though you already did, but keep doing it.
Yeah, keep doing it forever. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now, Duncan, is I'm going to go off and try and program a machine that will tell me it loves me.
If you do that, can you make one for a guy who lives in Ukrainian dollar land, because he really needs a hug from a robot right now, mate?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So thanks for all your thoughts. Thanks to all the people who tuned in, and until next Wednesday, may all your drafts be alpha. Peace out.